Here is Forsberg rushing the puck in. Forsberg scores! Well, that was quick.
And this place is going crazy.
Philip Forsberg scores in overtime.
Well, there you go. The Predators win it in OT, extend their win streak to 6 games. Philip Forsberg, did I see that was the second quickest goal in Predators history in overtime? Just a few seconds was all it took for Philip Forsberg to find the net for the Predators to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins 3-2 last night. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Game Studios, and we're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow, will join us in 1 hour. We'll also hear from Mike Vrabel at the podium at 12:30. Will Levis at the podium at 12:45. But we are starting with the red hot Nashville Predators taking down Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby at home last night with the overtime heroics. Willy D-Mase, how are we doing today?
Doing wonderful. Doing pretty good. Preds are just, man, they are on a heater right now.
Feeling
it.
They're
that
vibing.
Game last night was exciting. Started off exciting, ended exciting. That middle portion was less to desire, but for the most part, this team, they were energetic and they made the plays that needed to be made. They were, physical and against the boards and, getting the puck back into their zone. So this team's playing really well now. They just, you just got to hold on to it and build on to it. You see teams like this in every sport. Once they find sort of that thing, you never know exactly what it is, but it starts to click, and then everybody just starts rolling with it. You can pinpoint several different things, and all of those things add up to what they're doing now. Young guys are playing well. The leaders are playing the way we thought they should be playing at the beginning of the season. Soros is now, if you were worried about him back then, you ain't worried about him now because he's playing the way that, we knew he could play. And Coach Bruno has these guys out there playing within the system, and it seems like they're having a lot of fun doing it. So hopefully they can stay on this heater for as long as possible.
There just seems to be a lot of good belief right now that what they have been doing to, adapt to the new system, define roles, leadership group growing, it does look like they've made a lot of progress in the first quarter of the season here. And like I think I said yesterday, I think when they were 5-10, they felt like there was something better there. They had played better than those results. And I think this 6-game winning streak is deserved, but at the same time, sometimes you can play really well and a bounce doesn't go your way and you don't win all 6. But so I think at 11-10, it's a really interesting part of the season. Now it's a quarter of the way through, and you kind of ask yourself, where do they sit? What do they look like? Because in less than 2 weeks, they've gone from close to the bottom of the standings to a playoff spot, and there's still a ton of hockey left. But that was a great finish last night. What I think was really interesting is the way the game ended. Nashville gets an overtime goal. There's a collision, and D-Mase, you will appreciate this as a wide receiver who I'm sure – ran some rub routes. They call them the rub routes, and then the defensive player goes, "That's a pick. You can't set a pick." There was a classic play like that where right at the blue line, Ryan O'Reilly, who has just won the faceoff, is coming back to try to straddle the blue line to stay onside, and in the process, he picks off, of all people, everybody's favorite here in Nashville, Sidney Crosby, who runs right into him, and Philip Forsberg blows by him and goes in and scores. So Mike Sullivan made no secret about it. We caught him on camera. It was one of the last things. He threw an F-bomb out there that was, if you didn't have to be a good lip reader. You knew exactly. Just screamed it at the top of his lungs on the way out towards the tunnel. And said after the game he thought it was a bad call. I think it's very debatable, but it's one of those classic things. Was it a pick or was it a rub route? Ryan O'Reilly's entitled to stay onside, so he's battling, and he easily could have been – a lot of times the defender will push you over the line so you're offside, and it blows the play dead. But can you imagine if they had called that instead of a game-winning goal, it's a 4-on-3 power play for the Penguins. So that was a big, big call, or a big no call, if you will.
Now, is that one of those calls that, okay, if it's made, it's sort of like the replay. If you call it a fumble on the field, then, okay, we go back and look at it. Then, it's going to take a lot to overturn it. The call on the field typically is the call they're going to go with.
Right.
Call on the ice would, in that situation, if they had a call out offsides, would it have been debatable?
Well, if they blow the whistle, well,
Yeah.
see, there's two things, right? There's a penalty for interference,
Yeah.
which is what they didn't call. You can't review that. That was just in the moment. Do you think he interfered or didn't he?
What did you think, Willy?
I thought it was a good no call. I was watching. If you listen to my call, I almost missed the goal because I was watching to see if they called anything, and I was worried about O'Reilly because he got knocked down hard, and because he was stretching, I was worried he got twisted around, and he was going to be out of the play. But all of a sudden, boom, the game's over. 3 seconds later, I was like, oh, we got a breakaway here. But I thought in the overtime, this is, again, do you want to make a call and give a team a power play on that, which is, it's battling. You could argue that Forsberg was going to blow by Crosby regardless of whether there was contact here. Crosby was not in a good position. The other defender back, Carlson, could have done a better job of defending the play. He didn't. He stayed with O'Reilly. Sometimes, like in basketball, if there's a pick and roll, if you see your man's going to get picked, you switch, and you pick up the other guy. Carlson didn't do that. So they had ways of defending that play. So I think I'm trying to put my perspective as the Predators announcer aside, and I think that it's okay not to call a penalty there. Let the players decide it rather than to give a team a 4-on-3 on a borderline call. That's my opinion. I do think I've seen that penalty called at times before for interference, and so I don't blame the Penguins for being mad, but the Penguins are such crybabies. Crosby's the biggest crybaby in the league. Everybody loves him. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest players of all time, but he is a whiner.
So he's the LeBron of
hockey.
He
is a whiner. Yes, he is. He's totally the LeBron of hockey.
Yet another whiny opposing team after a Predators win. And after the Preds beat the Avs, what was that, last week? And the Avs announcer was saying, well, it was because of the seams in the boards at the rink. That's why the Predators won. Like, cry me a freaking river. Like, cry me a river, Sidney Crosby. I mean, that aside, because I looked at that, kind of how I approached the hit on Tajay Spears on Sunday against the Panthers. Said, if you want to call that unnecessary roughness or a hit on a defenseless receiver, I'm not going to dispute that because the NFL is trying to get rid of those hits in the game. But also, if you don't call it, I get it because, it's football. You got to tackle a guy somehow. I don't like having that kind of stance, and I'm fine either way with a call, but that's kind of how I felt with the interference. Again, I don't know how much of that is a Preds bias, where I'm cool if you don't call it. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that after the Preds win in overtime. I didn't think that it was egregious, and I did not think that it would warrant some whining after the game.
Well, I'm sure, everybody in Bridgestone appreciated the none call. I'm sure that's one of those calls where, you go back and you look at and you kind of discuss it. Obviously, you can't make a, change now, but you go back and discuss it.
Now, they did look for offside.
Yeah,
They did put the headset on to make sure
and that's
that
what
O'Reilly
I was
stayed on
wondering, did he
offside.
stay on side or not?
And he did. He clearly did. And thankfully, and this brings back such memories because remember in the Stanley Cup final, there were two enormous controversial calls that went against the Predators. So this is, again, why Predator fans are getting a good laugh out of hearing and looking at
last year.
Oh, and the Malkin hit last year. Yeah,
it's a makeup call from was it last season?
Or
last
was
season,
it
regular
when
season.
Borowiecki? There was one play where Malkin
Was
just
it Borowiecki or was
crushed
it
Borowiecki and got
Forsberg?
suspended for us.
This is one where Malkin was not suspended for it. I believe it was on Forsberg. It was long enough ago that it's comical to call it a makeup call, but that's what I'm going to call it.
Okay. But I think Predator fans, too, who can go back to 2017, there was an offside challenge that overturned the first goal of the series where Philip Forsberg's skate was very close to – you couldn't tell if his skate was touching the ice or not. And Peter Laviolette went absolutely berserk after the game. because they lost a very close game one in Pittsburgh. They could have swung the series, but he felt like it was inconclusive. The replay, you can't tell if his skate is touching the ice or not, but they overturned, or they gave the successful challenge to wipe out a PK Subban goal, which would have been huge to start the series. And then fast forward to Game 6. Every Predator fan remembers Colton Sissons appearing to score a goal that would have put Nashville up 1-0 in a real tight game, and they blew the whistle thinking that the goalie had frozen the puck when he hadn't. He never had the puck. It was behind him, and Sissons put it in. So to think that the Penguins walk away thinking they got jobbed, I think the Predator fans are getting a good laugh
Of course
out
they
of
are.
that one. Because sometimes you get the borderline calls, sometimes you don't, you know?
It's sports. It happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't.
Puck luck giveth and puck luck taketh away.
I want to ask you about the second period because one of those goals, it went off a player, Pred's player, that first goal, didn't it?
The second one did. The very beginning of the third period.
Yeah.
It went right off of Lausanne.
That second period was, I mean,
That
it wasn't
was
their best
It
period.
was not.
Yeah.
You're right. That was the best period that the Penguins played. And I think the Predators, that's where UC Saros was good. And, you know, you got to give some credit to the Penguins. You know, they're not going to just lay down for 60 minutes. But, yeah, I think that's the period where you started to worry a little bit. You know, they had the 2-0 lead. I think they gave up 14 or 15 shots in the second period.
Yeah.
And they ended up leading 2-1.
13-9 or
Something like that,
yeah.
13, 14-9. But I think that's where it's the mark of a team. Can you beat a good team when you don't have your absolute best, right? I don't think they played out of their mind well last night, the Predators, but they still beat the Penguins. Pretty good.
And the Preds are on an absolute tear. A 6-game winning streak. In the Avs and the St. Louis Blues and taking down, you know, the big bad Pittsburgh Penguins. Those are meaningful wins. And the Preds look pretty darn good doing it. And it is fun hockey to watch. I go back to last season, maybe the season before, where the Preds were able to eke out some wins, and man, was it not very pretty, in my opinion. It wasn't very pretty, or it wasn't the most upbeat, up-tempo kind of style to hockey to watch. These last few games have just been so fun. Even the games that the Preds have lost, even against the Ducks, that game, that was still a fun brand of hockey to watch. I look at it right now, and of course there's a lot of hockey left to be played. The Preds per MoneyPuck.com have an 84% chance of making the playoffs. We know how much that can change.
Surprisingly high. Yeah.
Very high. We know, and it's 84% chance to make the playoffs, 45% chance to make the second round of the playoffs, which I was kind of shocked to see that, to be completely honest with you. We know how much things change, either for the better or for the worse, by the game, by the month, especially as we get into the last few weeks of the season. But I don't know how you can't be so encouraged about the direction of this franchise, the decisions that Barry Trotz made with the roster, and the style and brand of hockey that Andrew Brunette wants to bring into Nashville.
Yes, and I think the other part that's happening here, because really the most important thing is the big picture for Barry Trotz. And I would love to hear from some of the Predator fans, especially it's interesting that they play the Wild tomorrow, and their story with John Hines behind the bench, right? Because he made a tough call. He changed the coaches, even though Hines and this young group that we're seeing the following year are trying to take that next step forward, and they did a pretty good job down the stretch. But based on what everybody's individual expectations were, we all kind of knew it was going to be hard to tell what exactly do they have this year, even though the emphasis is next year and the following year and the year after that. They're trying to build a roster that's really layered and deep and a contender. They're not that right now. But in the meantime, it's kind of fun to win, right? You're learning how to win. And take a look at the West. Edmonton has had a really rough start. They've won 3 in a row now. They've changed their coach. They're kind of that sleeping giant. I'm kind of wondering, are they going to come charging up the standings here? It's not out of the realm if they can get a little goaltending. Minnesota is a perennial playoff team that has now had the wheels come off early. They're trying to fix their season. They've changed coaches. John Hines got them a win last night, so they'll come here on the uptick, but they're way lower in the standings than we thought. So if you really look at it, there's a lot of teams with the Predators in that mix that we're not sure. It's pretty wide open, especially the 2 wild card spots. So it's a little bit of why not us?
Yeah.
Like
Why
Ryan
not?
O'Reilly,
Yeah.
Gus Nyquist, they didn't come here to just finish at the bottom of the standings. So you think Ryan McDonough wants to finish? I mean, they want the team to be great in 2 or 3 years too. They hope they're still around to do that. But in the meantime, why not win?
Yeah, might as well.
You got nothing to lose.
I think you have the players to do it, albeit some of them are young, half of them are young.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have the players to go out there and not just compete, because I think competing is just, okay, we're not good enough, but we're going out there and we're playing hard. This team is good enough, and they have been good enough up until this point, and they've won their share of games, and they're on a 6-game heater. What do you think of Philip Forsberg play? Is he playing some of the best hockey of his, I'm not going to say of his career, but of his later career?
Mace said it last night, and I think I agree with him. I do think you could argue this is the best hockey he's played for his career.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think.
Okay.
When you look at everything he's doing out there, he's driving the play. Now the points are coming. He's scoring at a higher rate than he's ever scored at before. When you look at goals and assists, but it's his complete game. He's banging people along the boards. He's going to the net with ferocity. He's making really nice passes. He's always been a good passer, but I feel like he's really dialed in of what's the next play to make. And I think he's feeding off of O'Reilly and Nyquist. For whatever reason, that I don't know if I would have thought that going into the season, that those three would play together, but they've been one of the better lines in the game. And that's crazy. Like, Gus Nyquist hasn't been a first-line player. He's got a 9-game point streak now. It's been 4 years since he even had a 5-game point streak. So he's usually not a guy, but he just seems to be the right guy at the right time with these two guys.
I do have a thought on Philip Forsberg and his hot streak, but first I want to get into your phones. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. David is on the line with a thought on the Predators. What's up, David?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. First off, it was exciting. That first period, they came out, good offense, good defense. So I was real pleased with that. But here's my question for you. With Coach Brunette, who seems to be doing a good job so far, but how does he transition to coach players like a Forsberg when he's coming from like the minors? Just curious to see what your take is on that. Thank you.
Say that again. What? How does he transition to coach from the minors?
Well, with players such as like a Forsberg, I don't know. Has he had much experience with players of that caliber from where he's coming from?
I see what you're saying. A new head coach dealing with the superstar player. Yeah. I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your call, David.
And I think Andrew Brunette, he was a head coach briefly for the one interim season, so he does have a little experience. But I think Brunette, having been a player and played over 1,100 games, probably gives him some credibility to relate to players. And I think what Andrew Brunette always falls back on, too, is he really likes this group of leaders. And those leaders, I think, have made his job easier, selling what he's trying to put in there.
And also think about when he was in Florida. That wasn't a roster full of jabronis. Those were some star players that he was dealing with in Florida. And, of course, on an interim coach basis, but still, interim or not, you're still coaching those players at a pretty high level. Yeah,
and I think if you look back over the course of the career for Andrew Brunette, like he played with superstar players like Joe Sakic in Colorado. Like you can go through it, and I think you learn how do you strike up a conversation with a superstar player? How do you earn the respect of those players? I think those are valuable experiences coming through.
Well, you get to see how they go throughout their daily routines and, what helps them, what doesn't help them, what kind of throws them off. So you're sort of looking at it from afar, not thinking, okay, I'm going to be a head coach someday, but it's all about how do I work with guys within the locker room? What are their personalities? What do they like to do on the ice? What don't they like? How do we play together? So that does help you being a former player once you get into that coach's seat, because you've been through it as a player and it's still familiar to you that you can draw back from it.
Back into your phones. Andrew is on the line with a thought on the Predators. What's up, Andrew?
What's going on, guys? So I was on my ride in to the game last night, and I actually caught the interview that Kevin Weeks had with Andrew Brunette, and I thought it was very interesting, their interchange with one another. on how I think there was a joke in the interview where they were talking about Burnett's locker room speeches, and maybe they haven't necessarily gone the way he wanted them to. Maybe they went off the wall, but like that's the personality that I think the players want to be around. Want to be around a locker room guy. They want to be around a guy that's been there, that's played 1,100 games. They can cut up, have a good time, and I think that's what you're seeing on the ice. You're seeing guys buying into the system. You see a coach that's been there, done that, and is encouraging good play, encouraging relationships. And like you could just see it last night when they went down when they tied the game last night. They didn't sit back like a John Heinstein would. They just attacked the puck. And I thought it was really refreshing. It's good to see these young players going out there and buying into the system, like a Sherwood coming out there and just hustle plays. Sissons, I think it's even rubbing off on the veterans. So it's just fun to watch. I'm really enjoying Burnett, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk about it.
Yeah, great call, Andrew. Thank you for calling in. From what I can see on the ice, I see what he's talking about of just constant attacking the puck. Like Andrew Burnett said at the beginning of the season, if we don't have the puck, we're going to get the puck. If we have the puck, we're going to hold on to the puck. I can see that. But Willie, you see more of the Andrew Burnett interaction with the players at practice and morning skate. How do you see that relationship?
I'm still learning about Andrew Burnett, the coach. I guess with the day he got the job, and he was only here for 1 year as a player, so I didn't get to know him real well back then. And of course, I was clueless and young back then. I didn't really know what I was looking for at that time. But I guess when he got the job, I thought he might be a little more charismatic. I think he is a little bit more all business. He's got a really good sense of humor that he doesn't show all the time. If you listen to him in the press conferences, he will throw a good one-liner in there every now and then. But he seems to me to be a guy that is constantly thinking about the team, constantly thinking, how can I make the team better? And I do think he has talked about how well he feels like the team is continuing to grasp what they want to do. I'm glad the caller mentioned Sherwood. That's another good example of a guy that has taken the opportunity that he got last year, and he has not gotten complacent, and he continues to push to become a guy that's going to get a multi-year contract someday, right? That's what he's working for. I mean, you love stories like that. He's a guy that has been a minor leaguer, up and down, gets a cup of coffee, goes back down. Last year finally became sort of a regular in the back couple of months of the year, earned a contract for this year. Now he's trying to earn the next contract, but he seems to be thriving under Andrew Burnett. That's a good story. That's how you build a really good roster, because it's not just do you have some superstars at the top. You need all of those guys. And so he's getting a lot of guys. How about Michael McCarron and Cole Smith? Man. Those guys are doing a nice job.
I jinxed it last night. I tweeted about a hat trick, and I shouldn't have done that. I knew I shouldn't have done that. I knew it. Those 2 goals in the first period, I thought Michael McCarron is unfreaking stoppable. But that is absolutely correct. Yes, you're getting production from your Forsbergs and your O'Reillys because you need that production from the top of the roster. But you can't just have it from those guys. You need it from the top all the way to the bottom. I would like to see a little bit more from the younger guys, from the guys that we would like to see emerge at least at some point here in the season. But I don't know how you can look at what the Preds are doing, the way that they're playing, not just the wins and losses, but the way that they're playing, the style of hockey, and not be encouraged about where this team is going. But I did say that I had a thought on Philip Forsberg, because Philip Forsberg is red hot. This team is red hot. We know that Philip Forsberg sometimes has a tendency to be streaky. And maybe as Forsberg goes, this team could go as well. How sustainable is this hot streak? How sustainable is this level of play to maybe catapult this Preds team into the playoffs? We'll get into that coming up next. And, of course, your phones as well, 615-737-1025. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
All right, let's talk Lone Pronto. The year is winding down. We've got the holidays coming up, And so if you need some cash for 2024, you've got a vision, maybe it's a home improvement project, and you're trying to set the table for this. Well, you don't have to set the table long term here. You can get thousands of dollars in as little as 5 days, so you can have it quick and get it started. So you got bills to pay, or if you want to start that project right now, go ahead and do it. Because if you've got equity in your home, if you're a homeowner, you likely do. Loan Pronto can access that quickly, up to 95% of it. And you can keep your primary mortgage rate intact. So if you've got a 3% rate, it's protected. And with Loan Pronto's Express Equity Line program, 90% of the time there's no need for an appraisal. So you can get that money fast and address your needs. Call Loan Pronto at 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval.
Can winning become contagious in terms of just when you start to see a couple go your way, then can that make the difference in some of these late game situations that you've talked about before?
I think it definitely brings confidence and a good feeling when you're winning. And it's amazing in this game and in any sport how that kind of happens. And we're all looking for that secret potion. Nobody's really had the complete answer to it, but I just know when you're rolling or you're on a streak, it's better to stay on a streak than go off one.
That was Andrew Burnett post-game yesterday. So when you're on a streak, it's easier to stay on one, and the Predators absolutely are on one. 6 wins in a row after a 3-2 overtime win against the Pittsburgh Penguins last night. And not a streak that you necessarily want to break when John Hines is coming to town on Thursday. John Hines, the new head coach of the Minnesota Wild. But, Andrew Burnett talks about the streak and how it can sometimes be contagious, where it's almost like a domino effect. You're feeling yourself. The Preds have looked fantastic. The style of play has been so fun to watch. Philip Forsberg on a heater, Ryan O'Reilly, Gus Nyquist. They have looked as advertised. My question is, how sustainable is it? And I don't mean to be the party pooper who brings up, the ending the win streak, but we've seen Philip Forsberg in the past. He has a tendency to be a streaky player. I think Predators fans know that, hey, when things are good, it's not always going to be good. How sustainable is this style of play, considering this is a style of play that's new to this team?
I think it's a really good question. I think Andrew Burnett's aware of that. And, I think when you're clicking, and hockey is crazy like this. I think baseball has some similarities where that's why in the movies we love when, like in Major League, when what do they say? They bring a Joe Boo and Serrano. He's got all these superstitions. Like, why are these superstitions out there in games like this? Because sometimes it feels like no matter what you do, the puck doesn't bounce your way. You can't find a hole in baseball. There's some things that you can't really control. There's some randomness to the game. And so when you're clicking and everybody feels good, you ride that wave. Mm-hmm. And then it can go the opposite. It can. Like we've seen it. There's no way the Oilers or the Wild, 2 teams that have replaced their coaches already, foresaw the kind of struggles that they've had coming. But they couldn't figure it out. So they figured we have no other move to make other than do some of these cut off the head of a live chicken or whatever, or put a hex on my glove or something. All of these things, unlock your eyelids, all of these references that we make. Right. They felt like they had to do something, so they changed the coach. So I guess all that to say, I would imagine there's going to be some peaks and valleys during the course of the year with this team. Mm-hmm. So ride the wave as long as you can, control what you can control. Hopefully you get a little luck with health. They're still missing 2 important players, centers. Tommy Novak and Cody Glass are not really a part of this streak right now. Those guys can help this team. So it's hard to know what's around the corner. I think Andrew Burnett is aware of that. But once again, it's just the process, right? You stick with it, and hopefully that you get good things happening. The other thing that I think is a game changer that they have that other teams don't, that are in this middle of the pack, is UC Saros. Yeah.
It's the goaltender.
He hasn't played lights out numbers-wise, but the numbers are starting to come around. He's now won 4 in a row, and I still think there's another level there. There's going to be some games where he can bail you out of games where you don't play particularly well.
And there is going to be a point in the season, and I think it's fair to say that there's going to be a point in the season where this team struggles, where things don't look as great or aren't as fun as maybe as they are going right now. But I tend to believe, and let me know if you all feel differently, that this fan base is okay with that. That if they go on enough down streaks that keep them out of the playoffs, right now, 84% chance of making the playoffs per moneypuck.com. We will check back in the Februarys and the Marches.
That's
going to
change.
Yeah. That's going to change. But if this team doesn't find themselves in a wild card spot, if this team isn't able to eke into the playoffs, I think the fans are okay with that because things at least look different. Things feel different. Even in losses, it is felt different.
I think this team, I think part of the fan base will be okay, but I think part of the fan base would think, okay, with this team, they're playing good enough, they should get in. they're not going to hold it against them that they didn't, because I think Trotsy was up front with everybody when he took the job. Like, this is going to take some time. And it seems like at this point of time in this short, marriage between he and the head coach, this team is, ahead of schedule. Would you say, Willie? I think based on what we saw last year and, coming in with a new coach and not knowing how this team would adapt to the system. And I do want to ask you about that, Willie, too, but how this team would adapt to the system. And it seems like, to me, they're ahead of schedule in a sense. And you mentioned the guys that are not playing because of injuries. But that's one situation. Do you think – I want to go back to Philip Forsberg. Do you think this style of play suits him better?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it does. And that's why maybe there's reason for optimism that he can have the breakout year that I think we've all felt like he's capable of. Part of it is going to be playing close to the 82 games, because that's another thing that has sidetracked him in some past years, where something freakish happens and he misses 8-10 games. And just knock on wood, you hope for a little luck in that department, because I think that's been part of the reason where he hasn't had that 100-point season. Right now, he's over a point per game. He's really market. So I think he's a good fit for the system. I think O'Reilly has been a great influence on him. So there's some things that are different than before. The system is different. The players he's playing with are different. And so we're seeing good results. So that's something to watch for, because if he does have that career, that's the kind of thing that can extend a team past the expectations. To me, 11-10 after 21 games probably wasn't that unrealistic based on what I thought they could be. But it's how they've done it that I think is a little different. It hasn't been because Saros has elevated them. And with John Hines coming in, we'll probably talk about this tomorrow, but some of the detractors of John Hines would say, yeah, they made the playoffs, they overachieved, but it was because UC Saros was picking everybody up. He was elevating them past what they should have been.
Right.
And I still say John Hines is a good coach that was dealing with a lot of flaws in the roster. But getting back to your question, Caroline, too, would the fans be upset if they just missed the playoffs? I don't know. Like, we still got a few months. If you're in a playoff spot for 3 months and then you drop out, then there's probably going to be some disappointment there. But I think the key question is, for the big picture, do you keep seeing gains in guys like Tomasino and Evangelista and Parsonen? And do you start to see guys coming up from Milwaukee that are helping? These are the big questions that I think you have. And then when Novak and Glass come back, what do they give you? Because at some point, Ryan O'Reilly in the next 2 or 3 years is probably going to taper off a little bit and what he can do. Same thing with Yossi. Same thing with McDonough. Guys who are like that 31, 32. So if you have a vision of this team being a great team in 2 or 3 years, it's probably not going to be because Roman Yossi and those guys, I don't know if they're going to be in their prime. They're going to be a little bit more in their back nine of their career, to use a term. So those other guys are going to be the ones that hopefully can carry you.
I think that's the idea, especially right now is, all right, older guys, older veterans carry us and allow those young guys to be able to develop without having to be the guys.
Right.
Without having to put the entire load on their shoulders. But there's going to come a day where those older veterans aren't going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And ideally, those young guys are ready for it and can step up and take that next step. Let's get into some of your thoughts on it. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter texts in says, I am shocked with the early injuries and they're still winning. Production is up down the line. I go back and forth on trading a D-man for a center. Thoughts of trading for Jenner or someone to help the top six. I would be scared to mess with the chemistry right now, though.
I think that's
a wealth of defensemen.
Yes. Right now, they have numbers on defense, and there is an opportunity, and I think this is not new because I think you knew this in training camp, that they have some defensemen. For example, they played 7 last night. Mm-hmm. They sent Spencer Stastny down, who probably didn't deserve to go down. He's played really well. They were 5-0 in his games. He had a goal. He's noticeably moving all over the ice. He's one of those young players that you're hoping is going to be part of the next nucleus.
Just a numbers game at this point.
But also they brought in Luke Shen for a reason, and they want to get him in there. So right now they're trying to figure out how to work that. So could there be a trade, especially for one of the right shot defensemen? I think so, because you have 3 of them that are in the final year of their contract. So it's going to take a while to sort itself out. And, I was talking to some people about this yesterday. If your vision truly is the future, if you're Barry Trotz, like if you're in the trenches and you're Andrew Burnett, this is what we talk about with Mike Vrabel. It's hard to wear both hats, right? Andrew Burnett's sitting there going, look, we won 5 games, 6 games in a row here. I got to win tonight. Let's sort this out. But if you're Barry Trotz, you're like, let's take our time. Let's make the right move here. It'll sort itself. It's not perfect right now, but we got to be patient for the right deal to come along. But it would, what he said, trade a defenseman for a forward, I could see that possibly happening at some point if the right deal did come along. But it may not. Watch, you don't have your regular partner, and the lines, you don't have your regular combination.
Shake things up.
Yeah, it can work
find
for a
some
few
sort of
games, but it's
consistency.
not really a long-term pattern that you want.
We'll get back into your thoughts on this. Plus, we will hear from Mike Vrabel at the podium in just under 1 hour. We'll chat with Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow at noon. So coming up next, I want to throw something around. Something that we've been waiting for Mike Vrabel to say or address. And are we going to hear it today when he's at the podium? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. We all know how stressful moving can be, but I am here to tell you that it doesn't have to be, because moving with Black Tie Moving, I promise you, is the most stress-free moving experience that I have ever had, because their trained and dedicated team is there to ensure that they take the stress out of the moving process. When I moved with Black Tie Moving, it truly was the easiest moving experience that I have ever had. All I had to do was sit back and let them take care of all of the heavy lifting, both literally and figuratively. I can't recommend them enough. It was a wonderful moving experience with fantastic customer service. So visit blacktiemoving.com or call 615-437-8401. That's 615-437-8401. Be sure to mention the promo code GAME to score 10% off of your next move. That's promo code GAME, G-A-M-E. And then sit back and enjoy the best move of your life with Black Tie Moving.
why, Vrabel might not think the Titans is an advantageous position for him. And, from what I've been told, and like you, I don't know Rand Carthon at all. I mean, from what I know about him is, he came up in the right way through the NFL and working his way through. He worked for a great organization, the 49ers. I know him. I don't know him at all. I know him to be from talking to people, certainly, very personable and the kind of guy who gets along with everybody and things like that. But like, as far as, Rand's job performance,
Like,
I asked people like, well, how come, why wouldn't that work?
I don't really know. I can't really tell you anything. I don't know. I'm just looking for a reason. Can Mike Vrabel become the coach of the Patriots? Maybe he can. Why? I can't really tell you.
I don't quite.
I don't know the
weak,
facts.
weak sauce. Weak sauce. Right
I like
there.
that word. I like that word.
Weak sauce.
Weak sauce. Straight up.
Dog water, to take Joe Rexrode's term. Dog water answer. Just a bad response.
Hey,
And
my
look,
dog's water is okay.
not D-Mace's dog water.
Yes.
D-Mace's dogs drink Evian with ice in it.
Is that ice chips or is that?
Yeah.
Hey, my dogs are particular. Okay?
They
They're
drink
chips.
LaCroix.
They're chips, okay?
So, I mean, just a bad answer. And look, Greg Bedard is a very well-respected journalist. I think that he does have sources. I don't think he's plucking things out of thin air just to create a narrative, but it was a really bad answer and bad justification to a massive, what's the right word?
It was a massive.
It was a
I don't
stereotype. He was
stereotype.
trying to stereotype Rand Carthon as a not qualified GM. I think that was a very clear implication there, and basically saying because of that, maybe Mike Vrabel wants to leave, and so he tried to paint Rand Carthon as an unqualified GM that Mike Vrabel doesn't like and didn't want.
Unfair.
And that's unfair.
And maybe there's truth to it. He just didn't provide enough evidence for me to be able to believe that report. I think his response there just kind of took any merit away from the report that he published in the Boston Sports Journal over the weekend. We'll hear from Mike Vrabel in less than an hour. I think that Mike Vrabel should address this, should say something to at least put the kibosh on all of the conversation that we've been having all week, that I'm sure Titans fans have been having all week. But will he?
It's to me, Wednesday, it's hard to do it. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but, Monday, somehow, some way, should have been when you asked that question. Now, the people that were there probably didn't think there was enough validity in it to even, breach that conversation with Mike Vrabel. Maybe they thought, okay, I read it. Let me go back. Because it came out, the day after the game, didn't it? Or the day before the game or somewhere around there. When did we get it?
Saturday, maybe?
Saturday. So I'm sure.
Maybe Sunday?
I'm sure because it came out so quickly right after a game that it wasn't a great game, but it still was a win. So you want to talk about the game. You don't want to then, ask that question. You wish you could ask it, Tuesday, but you can't because no one, players are off and coaches are, breaking down film and game planning for the week. And then Tuesday, to me, is just that threshold. Now we're on to the next week. Now let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts because whether we believe it or not, this is an important game for the Titans. I don't think in regards to playoff implications, I just think for them as far as this division, they need a win. They need a division win. And I don't think they've gotten one. So they need one. That, to me, that's important for them. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone did ask the question. I would be surprised if he brought it up himself.
Why?
And because at Vrabel, I think unless it was talked about amongst Rand Carthon NAME and whoever else in upper management and said, you need to address this. Vrabel is like, I am concentrating on my team. I can't worry about that outside stuff. That's just distractions to me. If it was up to Vrabel, he wouldn't address it at all. But
if it was up to Vrabel, he wouldn't be up at that podium.
Exactly. He wouldn't be at the podium. I think a lot of coaches wouldn't be at the podium if it was up to them. But I do believe if they haven't talked about it amongst themselves, the decision makers, then I don't think he's going to just arbitrarily get up there and say, help, let me address this, article from this guy. I think if he does, then that means it tells me they talked about it. And they said, well, we need to get in front of this and squash all of this noise because it's distractions, and it's distractions to a team that doesn't need any more distractions.
I think that's really the question. I think if you're discussing it internally, you say, what will it accomplish if I go out here and stay and say this, right? Address it. I think I made this point yesterday. An article like that might circulate around to other teams and other markets. Hey, GMs and coaches in the industry, they read stuff. And I don't think it's fair to Rand Carthon to get labeled like that. And people have an impression, and you don't need that, right? So for a young GM, I think it would be good for Mike Vrabel to say, you know what, this is a bunch of horse manure or wherever it is. I think that would be one thing it would accomplish. And also I think it could galvanize some people here too. And it could show the fan base, hey, we're together. Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel are going to figure this out. We got some big decisions that are coming. Team is struggling, but we're going to figure this out. And we've got the right people here to do it.
At least, and he doesn't have to get into specifics of exactly what their relationship looks like, but acknowledging that there are some serious concerns about he and Rand Carthon's relationship, at least addressing it and saying, look, we are in lockstep, whether it's the truth or not, at least acknowledging that narrative exists and trying to push past that and eliminate those distractions.
Well, I mean, yes, but then, there's always going to be that, well, we don't believe you, even if he comes out and said, we don't believe you, we don't know who's in charge and this and that. John McClain did bring up something. I was listening to him with Chase and Big Joe, because not us, but this sort of questioning, his, Rand's ability to do the job, the aptitude of him in his first year. John was like, listen, it's too early to evaluate him as a GM. I don't get why people don't understand that part. Like, it's too early. It hadn't even been a full year. It's too early to evaluate him as a GM in this league. If he had went and got home runs, it still would have been too early to evaluate him.
I don't even really think if we would know if they were home runs or not.
Exactly. So that's why let's sort of get away from that narrative of, him as a GM and he's whether he's good or bad. Well, it's incomplete right now because we don't know. All we know is this team isn't good. But this team wasn't good last year. And it wasn't, and he was not a part of this. So let's wait to evaluate him. Because if he's not doing a good job, hey, listen, I'll be the first person to say, hey, listen, they need to move on if he's not getting the job done.
Yeah, Rand might be a terrible general manager. I have no idea.
We have no idea.
He might be an amazing general manager, and Amy Adams Strunk is going to look like the smartest woman in the world.
Let him do his job.
Let him do his job. I think the biggest thing for me right now is because the evaluation will come.
Yeah.
Over time, over the next couple of years, Josh Wiley might turn into Travis Kelce, and Rand Carthon looks like a genius. For me right now, it's the relationship.
Yeah.
You need to have a positive working relationship for this franchise and for this team to get back to where it wants to be. I'm interested to hear Jonathan Hutton's thoughts on it. We will chat with him coming up next. Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Look at the time. Look at the time.
Look at the time. It is Hutton O'Clock. It's noon on a Wednesday, so it is Hutton O'Clock. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Game Studios. And joining us now is our dear friend Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Hutton, our favorite time of the week. Appreciate you for being here.
It's here. It's here.
Hutton O'Clock. It is here. I want to get your thoughts on the Greg Bedard piece that he put out over the weekend. A lot of pretty heavy accusations in there saying that Rand Carthon was hired because he was a minority candidate, that there were questions about his job performance in San Francisco, also questions about the relationship between Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. Greg Bedard was on with Jared earlier this week, and I didn't know if you got a chance to listen to it, but there wasn't a lot of substance there to some of the accusations that he put in his piece. What did you make of the piece, and what are your thoughts on Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon's relationship thus far?
Well, I mean, the accusations were more rumor, and it sounds like innuendo to me. And I'm just pairing up what he wrote versus what he responded with Jared, who gave him plenty of opportunity to kind of explain the detail behind it. And it's either he doesn't have any, or he's protecting a source that if he gives much more detail, it's going to be obvious where it came from. Those are the two things that come to mind for me. The whole thing about the NFL having something to do with it, I mean, if you want to bare bones it, it's true, because they had the accelerator program or something that it's called, the NFL accelerator program, where more or less a seminar where NFL ownership, team presidents, and I believe GMs bring a minority candidate with them. And Rand Carthon spoke at that on behalf of the 49ers, and that's where Amy Adams-Strunk first came across Rand Carthon, was at that seminar/program hosted by the NFL. So if you want to link that up back to the day, and there were other minority candidates, in order to just put a name with a face for possible interviewing opportunities when they come about. That's true, but I don't think that's what he's insinuating in any way there. But again, it's just an insinuation, and just surface level. The reaction for me was, okay, where is this coming from? And it's definitely unfair to Rand Carthon. Beneath the surface, though, to me, the story is, and why I think Vrabel has to say something about it. This is now going on how many weeks since he was in New England? And again, I'm not buying the whole timetable of this, but eventually it's going to circle back around to, is Vrabel trying to work his way out of Nashville? So now that's the area where Bedard is, and there's things in this that guys in Boston just shouldn't be blogging about. And I don't mean blogging in a derogatory manner to Bedard. He's a respected guy, but I just don't respect the piece based on the detail that he gave after he wrote it.
I'm with you there, that there might be some truth to what he wrote. I don't know, but it's the lack of context and lack of examples that kind of invalidate the report a good bit to me. But one of the points in his article was the questioning of Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon's relationship. And Paul Kaharski was on with Robbie and Rexroad this morning, and he said, yeah, I think it's fair to assume that Mike Vrabel didn't have a say in hiring Rand Carthon. How important is that? Is that important in Mike Vrabel's involvement in hiring Rand Carthon?
Well, so we were all skeptical, were we not, whenever it's pick one side or the other here. We were all skeptical during the interview process where Vrabel kept saying that he was being updated on how things were going. He was being kept in the loop, but not really in the picture. Well, okay, then it shouldn't come as a surprise then that he wasn't in the picture, if you believe Vrabel. But at the time, it's like, oh, sure, Mike, whatever, And also, while this was Amy's hire. Others in the room were Burke Nihill, of course, other ownership, Kenneth Adams, and others were there. Adolfo Birch is in the room for those interviews. Vrabel would also need to be in the same mindset with the general manager. I mean, that's just, to me, a bad hiring practice if it's not the case. And, oh, by the way, I think 90% of the people listening right now or across the country believe that Mike Vrabel is calling most of the shots. So whether or not he had a say in it, he's got the say in what's going on. He's the only voice we've heard of or heard from since the season started. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I mean, if we're going to discuss who's, making the decisions right now and who has the say, I don't think anybody here is going to say that Carthon is in collaboration with Vrabel to the point that they were pushing in the offseason where they made it sound like it was 50-50. I don't know if you guys agree. To me, it's Vrabel that has the higher percentage of decision-making power right now, just based on, how it comes across and how it's been personnel-wise, decision-wise, and the fact that the narrative of the offseason was, are they going to rebuild? Or are they not? This is not a coach who's going to do that. It's a general manager move in year one to buy into it. It's not a Vrabel storyline by any means. I don't think he's going to ever just sign up for a year where you're looking for the next season. He's focused on this year, and I think some of the moves that were made this offseason certainly point to that.
Now, Hut, so with all that being said, this was basically, in your mind, this was a Boston story that, and Bedard did say it was, primarily a Boston story. But I go back to, if it's a Boston story, then why conveniently slide in what you slid in, the one or two sentences you put in there about Ryan Carthon, and it's
making it sound like he's
exactly making it sound as if, okay, he only got the job because of this, and he's not really qualified to truly have this job. So that's the part that I don't care how long you've been doing your business. I don't care how highly regarded you are. You know when you do something like that, what it implies. He's a smart enough man to know what it implies. So I don't give a pass to the guy. I don't. A lot of other people are giving pass to him. He's been in this business a long time. No. You don't get a pass from me because you're smart enough. You've been doing this long enough that when you put that in there, the one or two sentences you put in there about Rand Carthon, you know what it implies. So to me, I don't give this guy a pass. I don't know what's going on over there in regards to the Titans, but to me, when you put that in there, you cause more distractions, and it's something that eventually, the Titans are going to have to address.
And it can be today. It can be, in 35 minutes or whenever Vrabel takes the podium. This is a head coach that put Terrell Williams as the preseason, quote-unquote, de facto head coach for the minority candidacy whenever jobs come open, right? He can really, to use a phrase that my grandmother would use, nip this in the bud pretty quickly. By standing at the podium and just addressing it from all different angles, and say exactly what you just said, but also just say, hey, I'm addressing this because it needs to stop snowballing. This is ridiculous. I'm here. I'm staying here. I'm in lockstep with what the organization is doing and where we're headed. And I'm tired of all the rumors coming out of wherever based on, someone's source's narrative or wish upon a star, right? Until that happens, Mace, Sports Talk Radio is going to continue to go in this the circle locally about this. So if it's the Boston talking point, whoever the sources are, quote unquote, and this all started with the report from multiple Patriots sources that Vrabel was the dream,
the home
hire.
run. Yeah, he's on the radar.
Home run hire. Thank you, Willy. And now here we are, and headed into December, and we're kind of back to that, but at the same time taking a shot at Rand Carthon as part of the reason, if quote unquote, if you want to read in between the lines of what's going on, and it makes Rand look bad, not Mike. So again, if to me, perception is reality. I buy into that. And if I'm leading an organization, if I'm leading a team, if I'm leading the front office, whatever, I'm taking up for my group, and I'm not going to wait on a question to be asked. If I'm going to jump ahead of it and just say, hey, this is ridiculous. here's how this goes down. And I stood up here and said, this is a collaboration. That was the catchphrase of the 2023 offseason. And I mean it. And here's examples of it. And Greg Bedard, to shout out George Plaster, can go shove it. Like that's where it normally Vrabel wouldn't address it. But if we're going to spend, and I've been listening a lot to your shows this week. I mean, it's dominated. It's dominated the talk. So at some point, you have to stop the discussion on the outside if you want to keep some perspective on the interior. And again, it's not hard to do. It can be snuffed out pretty quickly, and everyone moves on.
Now, in regards to the game this upcoming weekend.
There's a game?
Yes, there is a game.
We are in the middle of the season, which feels
it feels like the end of the season, but we are in the middle of the season. But this game to me is important for the Titans, not because I believe, okay, they win, they're going to make it to the playoffs, because I think they're in a hole that it's going to be very difficult to get out of. And I don't know if they have the personnel to do it on the field at this time. But I think it's important because they have not won an AFC South game. It's the Indianapolis Colts coming to your house. It gives, to me, the fans a sense of, okay, it's not all bad. At least we can beat teams within our division. If they don't get this win, I don't know where it goes for this Titans team.
Mace, it's not going to go win or lose. I mean, we know where the season's headed.
Exactly.
I think what you were saying, and I agree with, correct me if I'm wrong, is where are we headed in just the direction of the franchise with Levis at quarterback and with improvement from players that haven't really shown very much. 264 total yards and a win for this offense. Improvement, by the way, with Tim Kelly as well. Because while we had a great first quarter that we watched from Will Levis, either from the press box at home or in the stadium, a total of 86 passing yards for the rest of the game after that. I mean, again, like where did that go? The last two games, the Titans have gained 140 total yards on second and third down. So on first down this season, Mace, they have nearly 1,800 yards total. And on second and third down combined, they don't even have 1,300. So the offense just tanks either due to negative plays, sacks, whatever. And at some point, like if we're going to read an article from Bedard about Rand Carthon, who hasn't even been on the job for a full year, and evaluate how he's doing as a general manager, let's evaluate the coaching staff who's been here and hand-selected by the head coach that, right now is propped up by the fact that they're playing a rookie quarterback and the offensive line sucks. Coach them up if we're going to use the catchphrases that is thrown out there. I want to see progression in every area. They're ranked 6th in first down yards and 31st in second and third down yards. That to me is alarming because you're having success with players who apparently can't execute on the next two downs. So it's more than just the quarterback or Traylon Burks getting back on the field and catching the football or what have you. I want to see progression in all areas. And I think that, to me, is more of a discussion point on how this season finishes out. What is resonating in the locker room? Vrabel bristled at that last week from Tehran, but we'll get the true answer to that over the back half of the season. And so far, what they've done is they win at home and they play well against bad teams. The Colts at 6-5, losing Jonathan Taylor this week, and of course don't have Anthony Richardson. They score a lot of points, and oh, by the way, they allow a lot of points. It's time for Tim Kelly to go out and score some points with an offense that hasn't done it.
Jonathan Hutton is with us. So Hut, what I think I'm hearing you saying, and this is the tricky part, because I know how I feel. I do think winning games, especially when you have a young quarterback, is important. But I think you could make the argument, like, is it worth finishing tied or even ahead of the Colts and sacrificing 4, 5, 6 slots in the draft? I think that's the catch-22. That's a tough one to me.
But it's a tough one, Willie, but, like, do I want the higher pick? Yes. Am I going to try to force that? No, because again, the mindset, the mentality, the identity of this team has been lost since about the end of November last year, where they don't run the football that well. They don't win the battle in the trenches. They're pushed around on the offensive line, even in the run game. Like if you're sacrificing a one draft position in order to establish the fact that you have a semblance of having that back, that's important, because you're not going to replace that aspect with one player. They need a great player, and they need to hit on those great players, quote unquote, plural. But yeah, I want to. I mean, to me, it's important. Mace mentioned this too. It's important to see Levis as the rookie get some wins under his belt.
Yeah,
because that to me signals not just to the fan base but to the locker room that they've got their guy. And when Malik Willis went in last year, the team knew that he wasn't the guy. We all did. Will Levis can be, and we see all the tools. We see all the traits. He can make every throw. Go out and lead this team to some wins. And there are really bad teams that can, go on a mini run towards the back half of a season and go into an offseason with a little momentum and boost that doesn't necessarily carry over, because they're going to turn over a lot of players again this offseason. But it at least gives you some semblance of, okay, we have figured out the direction that we're going with this player. And right now it's extremely hard to evaluate Will Levis, who's just coming off of his worst performance after what was a very great first quarter where they were wheeling and dealing a bit, and that went away. And that's the bad taste that I have. They win the game, but I want some more juice, some more energy to what we're seeing, more so against better teams than some of the bottom third of the league when it comes to a certain side of the football, or just overall like the Panthers were. The Colts are okay. They're not great. But this is the team the Titans can go beat, just like they beat the Panthers.
Yep, this is a good litmus test, really. When you get down to the Colts are favored by one. It's gone down. It was 2.5
Congrats
earlier
to
in
the
the
Titans.
week.
They're not worse than the Carolina Panthers, but they should be on par with the Indianapolis Colts. Because I would just kind of raise an eyebrow and kind of laughed at the fact that the Titans are going to finish last in the division at the beginning of the year. But here we are.
Yeah. They need this if they're not going to finish last. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, Hut, this is an exercise that I've done in my head, but because I think it really illustrates where they're going to have to go moving forward here. How would you rank, who are the top 5 players on the Titans roster? You list the best 5 players on the roster, because then we ask how many of these guys are going to be back next year, and where are they in their careers? Because I think that it's not a top 5 that you're going to sit there and say, well, the coaches need to coach these guys up. Like I just don't think they're.
It's a top 5 that will take the Deion Sanders approach, where you could be replaced pretty quickly.
Yes, exactly. All right, so let's do we all agree Simmons would probably be number 1, right?
Number 1.
Yeah. Okay, so who are 2 through 5 right now? Derrick Henry still number 2 at this stage of his career? Maybe.
No, DeAndre Hopkins, as far as the impact this year.
Okay, so DeAndre Hopkins,
the most consistent.
I think Hopkins and Henry are both in the same category. They're in the top 5, but at this stage of their career, right?
Yeah.
At this stage of their career, what are they next year? That's a huge question.
I know. Yeah, but I'm just going with production, right? Yep. I'm going there, and by the way, I'm not picking out a single offensive lineman. I'm not.
Okay,
that's speaking volumes. I'm not going to the rookie just because he's a first round pick, is what I mean.
Yeah.
And
so who are 4 and 5?
What's that?
Who are 4 and 5?
4 and 5 right now, based on the consistency that we're seeing and the impact. Danico Autry. And
okay.
I'm being serious when I say that.
Yeah, I think
probably
he's fine. Is he on the team next year?
I think the Titans value him the way they value Henry, or did.
Yeah.
But I mean, after the injury to him a year ago, he hasn't been the same player until recently. Harold Landry should be on this list. I haven't seen anything there coming off the injury, but I mean, he's on. Again, it's a great question because he's honorable mention, even though he hasn't done anything. And then there's Roger McCreary, who I think has been up and down, but
right.
But again,
So we're stretching,
overall
we're reaching,
solid
we're trying to
considering the rest of
find
the
a
group.
number 5. This is not number 10 or number 15. We're trying to find a number
Right.
5. So that just tells you what we're talking about with the talent pool right now.
Yeah, and it's a sad situation based on the fact that it was a team that didn't have depth and they don't have many starting consistency either when it comes to all that. And Henry's on the list, yes. I mean, is he still leading the AFC in rushing? It's either him or Josh Jacobs.
No, I don't think he is. He's still maybe second because he was second. Wasn't he second coming into the week?
Right.
In the NFL behind Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
That is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up right now. He's either first or
Josh
second
Jacobs
in the AFC.
is
He's
above
fifth.
him.
He's
Okay.
5th.
Oh, he went down to
Fifth now?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Raheem Mostert's above him. Yeah, he's 5th.
Oh, okay. So I mean, he was first last week in the AFC. And by the way, the leader's Mostert was 785. Henry's got what, 740?
739.
739. So yeah, I mean that's still crazy to think he's that close to Mostert or Josh Jacobs based on what we've seen on a highlight reel each week.
Last one.
And the fact that he's had like how many weeks with 25 to 30 yards total?
3, I think.
Handful,
2
yeah.
or 3. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Shut down by the
it's
Browns,
been
shut down
awful,
in the
but-
2 Florida games on the road.
Last one for you, Hutton. You mentioned Will Levis. Not the best day from Will Levis, but that
Oh,
first
hey,
touchdown drive.
Willie. Sorry, Caroline.
Yeah, go ahead.
How dare I not mention Nick Folk or Stonehouse?
Well, okay. Well, there again.
Nick Folk is MVP.
Again,
Yes.
it comes back to my point. If your kicker
right,
is
I
in
mean,
your top 5 players, you got a problem. You got a big
How
problem.
dare I
Is Nick
not
Folk
mention
their
him?
leading scorer?
Yes,
Of course he
Nick Folk
is.
the leading
I'm
scorer.
sure he
Yes.
is. Yeah.
I don't want Brett Kern texting me.
You remember our day where we asked who the MVP of the first half of the season was? It was
Yeah.
like unanimous for Folk.
It was the
It's
Folk.
easy.
Absolutely.
That's a problem.
Only one that could score.
That is a problem.
Think about how bad the Titans would be if they didn't get that
No.
spot right.
I know. You're absolutely
Oh, my
right about
goodness.
They
that.
probably would have won a game.
Yeah.
Last
Yeah.
one for you,
Okay.
Hutton, quickly.
Go ahead.
What is your evaluation of Will Levis? Wasn't the best day against the Panthers. Good first touchdown drive, but through 5 games that we had now of Will Levis, what is your evaluation of him?
I mean, he's been okay, but I mean, in the NFL, you are not graded on a curve, and you're either a quarterback in the league or you're just a guy. And there's only look around the league. There's some bad quarterback play. They had 9 backups starting last week. Of course, Levis is one of them. But I see someone that you can build around, and he has the tools to survive in the NFL and be a franchise guy? Yes. Do I see a guy that has things and aspects of talent around him to allow him to grow and progress as quickly as you might like? No. And that can hold back a quarterback just as much as just sheer ability, is the fact that he's getting knocked around. But again, let me go back to the coaching aspect, Caroline. And I'm not here to rip on coaches, but Tommy DeVito is – I'm watching
Looks
Bryce
pretty
Young. He has a
solid.
total of 9 touchdowns this season. Bryce Young. Tommy DeVito has 8 in 5 games. So you are allowed to coach up players to produce to a level that is adequate and not the problem. Will Levis is not the problem, but am I certain he's the solution? No. And ultimately, that's what he's graded on. That's what he's judged on. And to me, it's just kind of incomplete right now, if I'm just being brutally honest and fair. I like the guy as the quarterback of what I've seen. I like the fact that they're playing him. But throw for 86 yards in the final 3 quarters against the Carolina Panthers, that needs to be mentioned. It's just simply not good, but we've seen the good. And if DeAndre Hopkins isn't on the field, it's not good. So I want to see more, but again, there are ways to utilize his talents more. They came out and didn't even try to run the football against Carolina. It was reminiscent to me of what they did with the Saints and Tannehill. Okay, let it rip then, and let's see what he's got over the course of 4 quarters.
Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow. Hutton, appreciate you as always. We'll chat next Wednesday.
Yeah, always really enjoy this, guys. Have a great rest of the week. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and we'll chat soon.
You as well, Hutton. Appreciate you. We'll hear from Mike Vrabel at the podium coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. And in Tennessee to bet. Also, tune into 102.5 and 106.3 The Game tonight for Vanderbilt men's basketball. The Commodores will take on Boston College at Memorial Gym tonight. Tip-off is at 8:15 p.m. with pregame beginning at 7:45 p.m. Coverage is also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com. We are awaiting Mike Vrabel at the podium. He will speak with the media here shortly. We'll also hear from Will Levis after we hear from Mike Vrabel. We were just chatting. We were throwing this around at the break. Willie, when you asked Jonathan Hutton, who just joined us in the last segment, appreciate Jonathan Hutton for joining us, top 5 players that you build around moving forward. After you brought up Jeffrey Simmons, I thought for the Will Levis sake, a young quarterback's sake, probably a Derrick Henry and a DeAndre Hopkins, that's not a 5-year plan. That's more like a next year plan. Other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, the point
depressing.
is the point is not to agree or disagree on the top 5. The point is to look
Pick
at
out guys.
what does the roster look like going forward. So anybody who's saying, well, Mike Vrabel's not a good coach, he's not coaching these guys up, or the coordinators are no good. Look at the talent level. Okay, so let's compare this team to, let's just pick the 2000 Titans. I mean, you're arguing over who the top 5 or 10. You can go 10 or 15 deep with really good first-rate players. I got McNair, I got George, I got Mason, I got Bishop, I got Curse, Bruce Matthews, Wycheck. I mean, on down the line. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The difference between a winning roster and how far this team needs to get to the winning roster.
Right.
Yeah, and
They got a long way to go.
They do have a long way to go because they don't have.
They don't have any resources.
Yeah, they don't
have picks.
They don't have the picks. They got the money now, but will they spend the money? They didn't. They chose not to, go all in last year, and I understand. I mean, you can only do what management allows you to do as far as spending the capital. But this year, I think they have to spend it. You have to start to build a true foundation for this roster moving forward, because the foundation of this roster is old. They're older players, and you traded away one of them, 3 or 4 weeks ago. We're still trying to figure out whether Derrick Henry is going to be here or not. Ryan Tannehill's not going to be here. So you have these guys that were a part of the winning. Now they're getting older, and you just don't have enough young guys that have shown enough that you can say, well, we can build, with these guys. And a part of it is, Willie, a part of it is coaching. That's why I was vehemently like, listen, they need to change the quarterback's coach because these guys are not getting better. And then they do change the quarterback's coach, and we see some progression in both of the young quarterbacks. They're not where they need to be, but we see some progression. So every spot, we don't see any, we don't see that with the offensive line. They're not, for whatever reason, we can say it's coaching, we can say it's the personnel. But for whatever reason, this
I think it's way more the
line,
personnel, though. It's not even close.
But I understand what you're saying. But we're not seeing these guys, they're not getting better.
Skoronski's not getting better.
Skoronski is just, he's at a space right now, and maybe he's hit the rookie wall too. I don't know. But he's at a space right now where you don't see that jump where he's just like, oh my goodness, he's getting much
enough to be able to tell you if he's not being coached up or just not that talented. I think he's been solid, but I'm looking more at the macro picture here. That they are. Let's just take Henry and Hopkins. We talked about trying to give Levis a support system to where he can grow. That is a huge decision. Just those two guys to keep them around, just so Levis has some comfort zone that he can work with.
But they can't do that until they get that offensive line straight.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's going to be the case whether they keep those guys or not.
That's their problem. we can talk about the coaches and we can talk about the roster as a whole.
Both, I think, are relevant.
Yeah, and which it is.
Yeah.
But the crux of all of this, the reason why, the germ that is going through this team, and I'm not saying that in a bad sort of, they are, bad for the locker room as people. I'm just saying their position. The offensive line is the germ, because it starts with the offensive line and it ends with the offensive line. In every locker room, the offensive line.
Let's just call them the germ
from
here on out. When we refer to the offensive line, just the germ. How'd the germ play?
But if you have a good offensive line, 9 times out of 10, you have a good team.
That's true.
You just got to have a good team. If you don't have a good offensive line, your team's going to struggle.
It's the spine of your
99, 2000
Exactly.
Titans, great offensive line.
So it starts until they get that fix. They can bring in whoever they want to. It may get incrementally better, like small, but until they fix the offensive line woes, you're going to continue to see the same things over and over and over again, and they can't fix it until the offseason.
And I'm not an offensive line evaluator. I would never pretend to be. But Trevor Maddich, he was an offensive lineman. He played at a very high level. He was on with Jared yesterday, gave his assessment of where Skoronski is at, because we can all agree that if you're looking at this offensive line, Peter Skoronski is going to be, the one you're going to look at, the guy that you
he's
hope
the hope.
to,
You've
he's the
got
hope.
to have
He
him.
did play much better this past game. He and Duncan together, they played a lot better.
This was Trevor Maddich's assessment of Peter Skoronski.
I think Peter Skoronski has had an up and down rookie year. Let's put it that way. There's been times when he's just gotten beat in ways that he never should have gotten beat. But overall, I'm very encouraged about it. I think he's clearly the most talented offensive lineman on that line. And I think he's done a lot of really good things, given especially what he's had to deal with. Remember that the offensive line, especially when you're inside, you're dependent in a lot of ways on your coordination to the guy on your left and the guy on your right. And so on Skoronski's right, the center, he gets just pushed back immediately all the time on pass and run, which throws Skoronski off on his coordination with how he picks up stunts, with how he does combo blocks in the run, etc. On the left, it's been a conga line of horrors in terms of rotating guys through, none of which can play left tackle. And again, there's penetration that they give up. There's poor footwork when it comes to combo blocks. There's all kinds of bad stuff. So he's sitting there on an island trying to be a guy that's coordinating the choreography to his left and to his right. And too often the guy to his left and his right are so off schedule that there's not a whole lot he can do. Now that makes him look a lot worse than he actually is being. Now, having said that, there are times when he just got beat. But at the same time, I am encouraged by the way he's playing, and I think he's going to be an outstanding player.
That
Conga
last
line
point
of horrors is perfect.
That's a great saying. We need to think of it. I'm trying to think. Have I ever been in a conga line of horrors at a wedding? Or you've been to all these
Any
weddings.
conga line
Yeah,
is
you've been in a bunch of
horrific
weddings.
conga line.
At a
conga
wedding,
line of
maybe.
horror.
You've been to the
Oh,
weddings.
Yeah, and he's sort of
I'm trying to
keep it
envision
shuffle.
that. Like, okay, oh, wow.
That last point, though, I think is the good one. Is how do you? It's tough when you have a weak sauce on your left side, and then you have an undersized center who's battling. I mean, we all love Aaron Brewer. He battles, but he's undersized.
You got weak sauce to your
he's
left,
the $2 steak.
and small fry to your right.
Yeah,
That's
that
basically
can't
what it
make
is.
it easy for a rookie guard to make it happen there. So I'm
encouraging.
encouraged by that evaluation from Trevor there.
He just needs some help. They need some help. We'll hear from Mike Vrabel coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, and D-Mase at Teddy's Tavern this Sunday from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. for our NFL pregame show. They'll break down the Titans' Week 13 matchup against the Colts and give you the latest updates before the game. Our NFL pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and Beast Unleashed. We are awaiting Mike Vrabel at the podium. If I was as tardy as Mike Vrabel is to my job, I don't think I would be here anymore. But nonetheless, we are awaiting Mike Vrabel at the podium. So let's get to some of your thoughts before we get to Mike Vrabel. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Wes in Clarksville texts in, says the last couple of years, Titans have been putting the O-line on the back burner, kind of like the kicker position. They always get people, but it's bottom of the barrel. It's like as long as they've got someone out there, then that's all that matters. I don't know how true that is. When they drafted an offensive lineman in 2020, just didn't work out. Drafted an offensive lineman in the second round in 2021. Just didn't work out.
First round last year.
First round this past year. So they've tried to get those guys. They just haven't worked out.
Struck out.
Here's one that is a good question going forward, too, is what will Nicholas Petit-Frere be next year after kind of a lost second year? That is his own doing. You know, he was playing catch-up from the start once that whole gambling thing happened. And then he got hurt. So what do you do? How do you pencil him in for a spot somewhere next year? He's probably one of your best five by default.
But I mean,
that's a guy they drafted, right? That's a guy that they drafted and are hoping he turns it. He started his whole rookie year.
Yeah, I guess it depends on, how you address free agency, because he's on your depth chart, but where is he on your depth chart? Is he a starter or is he a backup? That's what you got to decide, at the end of the season. These guys on the offensive line, to me, there's only really, it all depends on how Duncan finishes the season. But even him, I think he's going to need more. You got to figure out who's starters and who's not. There's really only one starter on that offensive line right now, and that's Peter Skoronski. Everybody else is, they are backups, guys that can come in and do the job for a few games, but you can't survive the whole season with them. So, I think that's going to be something that they address and address heavy because, again, I'm of the belief that if you get your offensive line right, that's half the problems right there. Actually, that may be more than half the problems if you get your offensive line right.
Which is easier said than done.
Yeah,
when you got at least 4 pieces that need to be replaced. Dave Texan says, why does Rand Carthon get no credit for signing Simmons, bringing in Folk, and a few teams that wanted DeAndre Hopkins? I think, to me, on the D-Hop and Jeffrey Simmons front, that was more of an Amy thing. That was more of how much does Amy Adams-Strunk want to pay? I thought the Simmons deal was probably going to get the Simmons deal was going to get done no matter what. It was just a deal of dollars and cents. D-Hop was a bidding war that he probably wanted to go where the most money was offered, and that's an Amy thing. Now, Rand does get credit for that, but it was more of how much is Amy willing to cash out.
Well, it's.
But Nick Folke does get credit for. Absolutely.
Well, no, it's can I convince the owner? Because that's what it's about, convincing the owner that the person that we want on our team is worth the investment. So that has something to do with Rand because he has to convince Amy that, listen, this young man is not over the hill. He still has enough left. He's going to help our quarterbacks, whoever they may be, and he's still a guy that defenses they account for. He may not be the deep ball threat, but he's going to, a guy that they account for. And we talked about this during that whole time. And my thing with D-Hop was I don't think he's going to catch a lot of balls, but I guarantee you his average per catch was going to be high. It rang true. His average per catch and his yards after catch don't match. They don't. But he's getting more chunk plays because of how they're running their offense. They're not trying to, with him, they do dink and dunk, but he gets those big chunks down the field that has helped them.
Yeah. No, I think
Absolutely.
about how what life might be for Levis if they just didn't have Hopkins on the team. And, even before that, but especially for Levis, right? Hopkins has really helped him experience some success.
No, of course.
So
he's
he's been worth it for that reason.
He's been like a security blanket for Will Levis. When the
He's
ball
their
has
tight
to
end.
come out quick.
He's their tight end because their tight end is not functioning in the manner that many thought he would, meaning Chicago. He's just not playing to the level that many thought he could and should be playing. So he's like the de facto tight end / receiver. But Rand had to convince Amy that it was worth it. So he does deserve credit in that standpoint because the owner's just not going to say, okay, go get that guy. Let's go get him. No, you got to convince, especially a guy that's over 30 or 30, and it's come off an injury. He was suspended. You got to convince me why he should be on this team because I can tell you why he shouldn't be on this team if I'm an owner, but you as the GM convince me why I should give him the extra $5 million, to be on our team.
Yeah, he absolutely gets part of the credit pie. But when it comes down to money, that is ultimately an owner decision.
Exactly.
Dylan Texan says, I truly believe that the scouts need to be completely replaced as well as the strength and conditioning coach. This is too many years in a row for it to just be coincidence and not a pattern. As far as the strength and conditioning coach is concerned, I know that was a big topic whenever the Titans were dealing with so many injuries. That hasn't really been that much of a problem this year.
I don't think so.
No, it doesn't. You can't. Injuries are not predicated on whether you have someone in the, weight room, a trainer that is just great or not great. Now, obviously, you have to be good at your job. And I believe that training staff, the people in, the people that service the players as far as injury and stuff, and then the people that make sure they get their weights lifted, I think they are more than qualified to be able to do their job. And I know some of those guys. So injuries is not about that. Injuries is just what happens in a physical sport. They're not playing badminton. They're not cross-country runners where the likelihood of you getting injured is very slim. They're playing a high-pressure, high-impact game. And to solely put that on the training staff or the weight room guys, you can't do that. We had guys that were, that didn't work out with the in the weight room with those guys on a consistent basis that chose to do things on their own. And they got hurt. So you can't blame it on the training staff.
Like Traylon Burks getting concussed.
Yeah, you can't blame that on.
It's football.
I mean, how does the training staff stop that?
Yeah. And the injuries just aren't as much of a problem this year.
this
They're
year.
inevitable. It's football.
Yeah.
Injuries are going to happen. I don't think it's paralyzing this team as much as maybe it did in 2021 when Derrick Henry broke his foot and you're the most injured team in the league. 2022, again, same thing, most injured team in the league. Another texter texts in and says, Raymond texts in and says, where is Rand? Why is Vrabel the only one talking? We have good media in Nashville. We do have good media in Nashville. I wouldn't expect Rand to speak with the media twice, 3 times a week like Mike Vrabel does. I'd like check-ins, especially we talked about this earlier. I would have liked to have heard from him after the Kevin Byard trade.
I'm a little bit surprised because I think he deals with the media really well. I think that's a strong suit of his. I like hearing from him. I think he's a personable guy.
Super friendly guy. All right, coming up next, we're dealing with some technical issues on the Titans end, perhaps. We'll try to get Mike Vrabel and Will Levis up at the podium. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Make your silly underdog picks for your chance to win weekly prizes. You can play at the GameNashville.com or the 1025 The Game app. Silly Underdog Picks is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, and the Game Nashville app. We're live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Game Studios, and we're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. Now, Mike Vrabel is now at the podium, having some live stream issues on the Titans end, so we're not able to carry that. But once we do get that, we will get you to Mike Vrabel and Will Levis live and as close to it in its entirety as we possibly can. But there was some news, some Titans news today. Jaleel Johnson, we're familiar with the name. Yeah. Defensive tackle, was with the Titans, was waived here a couple weeks ago. And when he was waived, he tweeted out, "They're so worried about trying to fix the defense when we're not the problem. Effing put the tape on and watch." And he sent out a second tweet that must have been so great to be traded to a 9-1 team, 9-2 team after this team. So basically just going on Twitter and very publicly trashing the Titans right after he was waived. Well, he was just added back into, was it practice squad? Let me pull up this note from
the 53-man
signed
roster.
to the active roster, Jaleel Johnson.
Put the tape on. He's
in
there.
On.
I guess they did put the tape on and say, wow, I guess you're right,
you
Jaleel.
ain't lying. Yeah, you're right, Jaleel. My bad.
And this team's not going to live and die by Jaleel Johnson. This team's not going to win or lose because of Jaleel Johnson, but kind of an odd, strange move from a head coach and a franchise that claims to value and covet locker room and culture and guys that want to be here, only having guys that want to be here, bringing back a guy that maybe kind of publicly dogged you on social media.
He probably wanted to be here, but they felt different, and he was like, man, I'm not the problem. We're not the problem. You're cutting the wrong guy.
Right.
You know? And then sort of alluded to, hey, it must be nice getting traded to a 9-1 team. Kevin Byard.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, wow.
Well, you should have traded me and Kevin Byard.
But Mike Vrabel was asked about it. This is what Mike Vrabel had to say.
The door, what kind of conversation do you have with him as he comes back?
Well, we had a conversation, and obviously Jaleel, I would say that's out of character for Jaleel. I've enjoyed the time that he was here, getting to know him through the off season and camp, and his professionalism, and obviously he was frustrated. I think we all at times get frustrated, and that's how he chose to let that emotion out. Probably not the way that we would recommend it, and he knows that. But again, we all get frustrated at times, and I don't think anybody's immune to that. So I know who Jaleel is, and I'm comfortable that he'll give us everything that he has.
I'll take his word for it.
Hey, we need.
There's so many bigger
fish
that this team needs.
We
to
just
fry.
need some players.
And you know Mike Vrabel, he's not going to bring somebody on that for a borderline spot.
Yeah.
Unless Jaleel Johnson is way better than I think he is. I mean, he's lucky to be in the league, but I'm sure there's some other people that are probably close. Mm-hmm. So Vrabel is giving the benefit of the doubt. He doesn't like non-team guys, right?
Yeah. So I mean, hey, take it for what it's worth, and that's why it's just best when you leave a team, try not to burn the bridge too much, or try not to burn it at all. Just go about your merry way, and if you felt slighted in any way, it'll show up. It either what they were saying turns out to be true, or what they were saying turned out to be not true. So obviously, he's back. So
he's back. Another thing that Mike Vrabel stated in his press conference, again, having some technical issues, so not able to carry that live, but we'll get as many clips as possible to you, is the run defense against the Indianapolis Colts. Of course, last time the Titans faced the Colts this season, they let Zach Moss run all over them. I mean, I believe it was Jeffrey Simmons that said after the game, man, he looked like Le'Veon Bell out there. And I'm thinking, it's Zach Moss. No disrespect to Zach Moss. He's no Le'Veon Bell. But there's also some news that came out yesterday, and then some updated news that are coming out today. Per Ian Rappaport, Jonathan Taylor is expected to land on IR. He's had surgery on his thumb, been dealing with a thumb injury. Jonathan Taylor had a big week last week. Over 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. When I first saw that, My first thought was, don't care about Jonathan Taylor because it's Zach Moss. Zach Moss is the one that worries me because he was the one that ran all over the Titans last time they faced each other. But Mike Vrabel was asked about the adjustments, changes that they're going to make, their defensive approach to this Indianapolis Colts run game this go-around. This was Mike Vrabel.
Look at is just anytime you have a 60-yarder or whatever it was, that's gonna affect the overall run defense. I wouldn't say that it was all bad. There's a lot of, no gains. There's some ones and there's some twos, and then there's some loose ones. And certainly the X play there on short yardage was one of those, and it was a big one. So again, we know that this team is an excellent. Again, they're really good up front. I think they play well together. I think they work well in combination. Good scheme, and they're effective running the football. And so we'll have to be really good. We'll have to be able to defend some of those shots that we got last time, and make sure that the quarterback is not creating loose plays.
Jonathan Taylor or not, I'm concerned about this Titans run defense.
Well, I mean, you should. Zach Moss is averaging 4.8 yards a carry. Running players aren't good until they show you they're good. And, Simmons saying that about Zach Moss, yes, it's a laugh. It's funny. But Zach Moss is a good back.
Yeah.
And he's proven it. When he's got opportunities to run the football, his days in Buffalo, for whatever it was, Buffalo don't run the football. We know that. Their premium on running backs is low as just about any other team.
I think they're doing a disservice to themselves.
Exactly, by not. But so you can't quite look at, even though his Buffalo days, he averaged for his career at Buffalo over 4 yards per carry. This is a good back. This is a good offensive line. Both backs are averaging over 4 yards per carry. Both backs, I believe, have I know Zach Moss has close to 700 yards, and I think Taylor has around 4, somewhere around there. So
14.
So this is a good running team. Not just the backs. These offensive linemen do a good job at run blocking.
And Gardner Minshew is a pretty good passer.
Yeah, and Gardner Minshew is your quintessential backup quarterback. He's like the Fitzpatrick. He comes in and he can do some good things, but it can't be on his back. He benefits greatly because of their run game and their offensive line, where he doesn't have to win football games.
Will Levis is up at the podium, so we will send it over to Will Levis now.
Execute it, and then for us to nail the field goal. I mean, that felt awesome going to the locker room, and it sucks that we weren't able to kind of carry that over into the second half and keep things rolling, but there's a lot of good things to take, especially from that first half. And when there are 4 newer guys in the huddle like that, it makes it feel, that much better.
Arden has said he really liked how you came in the circle and you broke them down and you told them about dogs and playing like dogs. For you as a younger guy, where does that comfort level and that confidence come from to be able to tell all these veterans what you told them?
I think I'm still trying to figure out my leadership style. I'm slowly, I guess, kind of feeling out my involvement in that area. But I mean, I'm just trying to be myself and speaking from the heart and speaking in a way that I feel like could bring others up, and try not to be corny and just be authentic, and that's all I can be. So just try to give them a little message, and hopefully it gets through to some guys.
Was there a point where you felt comfortable enough to do that, or has it just been a gradual process?
I think this week, actually, a couple of teammates even helped me, pushing me on, hey, break us down, get us going, and to hear that from guys and to know that they're pushing me to be in that more type of role, that helped me a lot. But I think it's just a slow process of figuring out my style of leadership and being authentic and doing whatever I can to get the guys ready to go out and play.
What did you think about who pushed you to?
Arden was one of those guys in the locker room that day. But even throughout the week, with breaking down stuff and communicating and getting the guys together, Coach Vrabel made a big emphasis after team periods to get the whole offense together and run through the tape and evaluate it right there on the field for the first time, just to kind of get the corrections and the knee-jerk reactions to the play, and then we watch it again when we go back. But I think that translated into the game well, and that I was able to communicate a little more comfortably with all the different position groups. So just got to keep working on that.
Think about any of that stuff ahead of time, like the night before at the hotel. If I had a chance to talk, this is what I say, or driving, or is it spur of the moment?
Sometimes I think it wasn't spur of the moment that day. Like I think that morning, if I knew that if I had the opportunity to come and say a message, like I knew what I was going to say. So I had the opportunity to. I was looking to take that opportunity when it happened, and I'm glad I did get the opportunity.
From a guy like DeAndre, just such a veteran in the league. It's his first year here with this team, but I feel like you guys have built that connection from the get-go. What did he talk to you?
Yeah, I mean he is just like why I love Coach Vrabel so much is that he pushes all of us, and that standard that he holds for us is even higher than the standards that we hold for ourselves, which that's what you look for in a coach. And that's the same thing with DeAndre. Like I think maybe the first couple of weeks he gave me a little leeway, but now it's like I got to be on my stuff, and if I miss something and I miss him, he'll let me know. And I'm going to do my best to not make it happen the next time, or to make it happen the next time. But I love my relationship with him, and we're able to speak with each other freely, and I trust what he sees, and we got to make sure that we're on a similar level so that I can get him the ball more.
He showed a small social media clip to the defense, this mac and cheese thing. I don't know if you heard it.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a big hit.
Yeah.
And really hit the theme and was sticky. But I asked him if he ever falls flat on his face, and he said plenty of times he has to say, like, it's okay to laugh. That was meant to be a joke.
Yeah.
You remember any times where he put something up and got like a zero reaction? And
No, I think Coach does a good job of bringing up clips that are relative to what's going on. And that one was, I think someone came up to Thanksgiving dinner making their own mac and cheese, and that didn't fly with Mama, and she let her know. And so that kind of was in relationship to what was going on with us, was to not go on and do our own stuff and to play together as a team. And then I kind of took that, and my message to the guys was, sure, like, don't do your own thing, but be you, like, be that dog you got inside of you. I felt like in the last few weeks we'd lost that kind of swagger that we had, and we got to be walking around the field knowing that we got it. And feel like we got some of that energy this past Sunday. We got to keep going.
How much fun is it when there's a laugh moment like that makes the point?
Yeah, and it helps you get through the days, and just you need those laughs, and Coach Vrabel does a good job of mixing them in when it's least expected too.
You're indoors this week, but have you ever been told that you're like unusually comfortable playing in the cold? I see you out here with no pants, no sleeves. You said you sweat a lot during training camp when you're hot. Is that just like natural for you, cold weather?
I'm more comfortable sleeveless. Like I don't know, like wearing a long sleeve when I'm throwing and stuff just doesn't feel the same. But I try to go sleeveless whenever I can. But I think it's a product of where I'm from, like growing up in the Northeast. Like I'm not afraid of the cold. But yeah, if it gets below like 20, you might see me in a long sleeve, but we'll see. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Will. No pants, Will Levis at practice. My goodness.
Yeah, Will Levis
No
ain't got no
sleeves
pants.
and no
Will,
pants.
this is a family program.
This is PG, man. PG.
There was one thing that he said there about taking on more of a leadership role. I think that's a really important aspect of a starting quarterback role, especially when you're kind of thrust into it in the middle of the season unexpectedly.
Yeah, but it's something that has to come naturally. It can't be forced, and Will, address that somewhat. He's just being himself. Leadership, there's not one leadership style. There are several different leadership styles. One may work for one person, it may not work for another. He said, I'm trying to find my way through this, and he's going to continue to try to find his way through this throughout this season and even next season, because the roster's going to change even more. There's going to be a bunch of new guys, so he's going to have to figure out what leadership style is best for him to get across what he needs to get across for the team.
There were two things that I liked about that answer. Number one, he used the word authentic, because there have been guys, I'm sure you've seen them.
Oh, yeah.
They come in and they want to be the leader, and they're saying stuff, and you're like, this is kind of hollow.
Hush.
You're like, you're not. It just doesn't work, right? It's not real. You have to sort of earn it too. The other thing that he said that I liked was, it sounded like he was reading the room a little bit. He's like, he was encouraged by some of his teammates. Said, "Go ahead, break us down. You're the quarterback. Let's go." I think that's smart by Levis to sort of feel it out before you just go do it. And everybody's like, what's this guy doing? He's a rookie. You know, you read the room a little bit. Because remember, we talked a lot about that was the thing about Levis before we ever saw him in a Titans uniform, before he was drafted by the Titans. All these reports about what kind of person he is, how he was in the interviews, all the social media stuff, and we were concerned about that. Yeah. So I think he's taken that to heart a little bit, don't you think?
I think he should.
Yeah,
that's his role.
But I like the progress he seems to have made there. I like how he's handled that part of it.
I mean, this is for whatever. I mean, right now, this is his team. This is Will Levis's team.
He's QB1.
I know there's other leaders on that team, but other leaders on that offensive line, offensive side of the ball, but he's your guy. Like, he's your leader moving forward. Now, whether he continues to progress as a player, that's a different story. I believe he will, but right now, this is your guy. He's the leader of your he's really the leader of your offense. But again, he's just trying to find his way through all of this. I look back on Joe Flacco's first year where he was just thrust into, he wasn't supposed to be the starting quarterback. It was supposed to be Troy Smith. Troy gets injured. Troy gets sick, and he has to be in the hospital for a bit. And, we didn't think the rookie was going to play, but he had to play. And he slowly learned his, because Joe was a quiet guy anyway, but he slowly learned his leadership style as the season went. We didn't thrust it on him because there were enough leaders in that locker room. We didn't thrust it on him. It just came naturally. And, I can't pinpoint, what moment, it was for him. But as the season went on, as we started to win more games, as he started to trust people, as we started to trust him as a player, his leadership grew. And that's what's happening with Will Levis.
What do we make of Will Levis through 5 games? Because Sunday was not his best game. There was a great touchdown drive where it was really pretty much just Will Levis and Derrick Henry moving you down the field. I thought he looked great there. But we talked about it on Monday. 3 or 4 passes that were near interceptions. And if that's not the Carolina Panthers, maybe those are interceptions. So we've seen some kind of holes in his game since that incredible, amazing, couldn't even script a better rookie debut against the Falcons. What do we make of him so far?
I still am in the process, I think, of watching him as defenses learn a little bit about what the Titans are trying to do with him. As Levis learns that, how does he process that? And can he get to another level? And so, okay, they're trying to take away my comfort zone. So what do I have as the next thing? It's like a minor league batter coming up, and his first couple weeks, the scouting report's not out on him, and he shows, man, he can hit a fastball. Wow, look at that rookie hit the fastball. So now let's throw him some off-speed stuff. Let's work him inside a little bit more. The scouting report comes in, and now the good hitters, can they adjust to that? And then all of a sudden they can handle those pitches. Now you got a problem if you're a pitcher. So that's what I hope Levis can get to. As the tendencies are out, those coordinators, D-Mase, there's like a 3rd and 8th. This is what they like to do. Let's take that away from him. So now what can you do, Levis? Plus, they got to give him a chance. Hopefully they can protect him and give him a chance to succeed.
Yeah, that's first and foremost. You got to protect him in order for him to try to do his job at a high clip. My evaluation of Levis, it's okay. I see some progressions that he's making, but also see him trying to be Superman when you don't need to be. Just throw the ball down, do something else. And this is what I'm afraid of. Not necessarily, him continuing to learn the game and him continuing to, progress and hopefully be that quarterback that the Titans believe he can be. But I'm worried that if they continue to lose, how much hero ball will he try to play?
Yeah.
How many throws will he try to throw in there that he shouldn't throw because he's like, man, I gotta make a play. That's the
then you
part.
get you in a bad habit.
And it becomes a bad. That's where Tim Kelly comes in. That's what Tim Kelly and Charles London need to continuously be in his ear. Like, don't play hero ball. take what the defense gives you, but what you need to do is be calculated in what you're doing. Understand and know what the defense is doing. And there may be a lot of times where you take what the defense gave you, but your risk need to be calculated risk. Like if D-Hop is down the field, it's just him and another player, but he seems like he covered. That's a calculated risk. I'm going to throw it to D-Hop because more than likely either he's going to catch it or nobody's going to catch it. A calculated risk is not throwing it into double coverage.
Right.
That's not. Especially if it's not a situation where you got a 4th and 10 into the game, you got to make a play. That's different. But throughout the course of the game, don't play hero ball. Don't. That's what I'm worried about. Not to say he will, but as you start to lose, you start to try to figure out ways to win games on your own.
And that's a lot to take on as a rookie
yeah.
quarterback of it's on me to make a big play. It's on me to get us back in this game. It's on me to make that big throw, that big wow kind of throw to win this football game. And he's frankly not getting a whole lot of help around him to win football games. So when we talk about quote unquote ruining Will Levis, yeah, it's a dramatic word to use, but that's what comes into play.
Yeah, and again, it's up to the coordinator and the quarterback's coach to make that not happen. Because I looked at, and I don't know why I looked at it today, but I looked at the targets amongst each guy, and this is where the hero ball, I think, may come into play. DeAndre Hopkins has been targeted 83 times. The next closest player, I think, is like 40. So it's 2-1. And beside that guy,
makes sense.
Beside that guy, the next guy I think is like 20 targets. They got to find a way to help him because the more guys he can depend on, the better he will be as a quarterback. If he feels that this is the only guy that I could throw to, he's going to start playing hero ball if they start losing. You got to get him. And I know Tim Kelly probably is trying to teach him, listen, you got to be able to see the whole field. Because if you don't see the whole field, teams really get a beat on what you're doing. That's why the pass was almost intercepted when he was trying to throw it to D-Hop. You know how many times they ran that play, that little sit-down play? They run that play all the time.
And his eyes went right
all
to D-Hop.
the
And the
time.
linebacker read it
Exactly.
perfectly.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like, you got to learn how to, know that there are other guys. D-Hop is your guy, but you can't make it so obvious where now the defense, as the season gets going, now the defense gets a beat on that.
And the defense can say, all right, we'll just double and triple D-Hop.
Exactly.
And then if you want to win the game with Chris Moore and Nick Westbrook-Kine, no disrespect to them, more power to you. We'll continue the conversation coming up next, and we'll get into your phones, your thoughts on the Titans, Will Levis, what we heard from Mike Vrabel and Levis at the podium. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. And also, the Chase and Big Joe show will be live from the NASCAR Awards tomorrow at the Music City Center, brought to you by Green Trees. That's D-Mace's people at the NASCAR Awards.
I will be I will leading the parade today, so I will be leaving work pretty soon here to lead the parade. I will be the pace car.
I
today.
truly cannot think of a better leader of a NASCAR parade than our very own Derek Mason.
I was told I couldn't keep the car. Damn it.
Dang it. Well, don't go down without a fight, D-Mace.
Exactly.
That is brought to you by Green Trees Company Dispensary, providing high-quality legal THC products. Learn more at greentreescompany.com.
Happy hump day to everybody out there in Nashville. And if you're in our listening area, happy hump day to you. Listen, our partners in sports, we're excited to launch their new introductory promotion available to all new customers in Tennessee. The No Danger First Wager. When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000 No Danger First Wager. When you place your first bet on Zen Sports, you will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses, up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports has launched a new VIP program for the premier bettors of Tennessee. If you think you might qualify for that, then listen up. Zen Sports is hosting a VIP tailgate and game experience on December 3rd from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. for the Titans versus Colts game. So this weekend, people, that means food catered by a renowned chef, unlimited booze, and a private room for bet placing and mingling with fellow VIPs. Who doesn't like that, okay? The VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sportsbook will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports. So, what are you waiting for? Go and download the app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports betting just got better. Gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Jonathan's a home run hitter every single time. And it's also like the way that their zone read works, the patience he runs with, the hezzy, the jump cut, and then the press. So I'm not saying, like, Zach Moss, I think, can keep them afloat. But we're talking about a team that's got games left to go on a playoff run. To minimize this is silly. This is a big loss for them.
All right, there you go. That was Dan Orlovsky on the Indianapolis Colts loss of Jonathan Taylor, at least here for the next few upcoming weeks. He's undergoing thumb surgery. Per Ian Rappaport, just about an hour or so ago, he's expected to be placed on IR. So no Jonathan Taylor this Sunday. Jonathan Taylor wasn't even really that much of a factor the first time the Titans played the Colts. It was the Zach Moss show. So it's still the Colts' run game is still a concern to me.
Yes, I think that's fair to say, is that they have a good running attack.
Mm-hmm.
It was Taylor's first game after all of the injury and all of the drama, the soap opera, and so I don't think he was really in great game shape. I think he started to play better, but if you look at the numbers as a whole, I think Zach Moss has been conservatively just as good, if not better, which is always the dilemma about the running backs anyway. You can find another guy, is what a lot of teams believe. And so how do you feel if you're the Colts today about signing? They gave in. When it was all said and done, they gave in and they gave him the money. Is that smart?
It hasn't been a bad year for Jonathan Taylor necessarily,
Well,
but I don't
games.
think that he's lived up to the money that they're giving him.
7 games, 414 yards, but you're married to him for at least a couple of years now with the money you're paying him. And you have Moss.
Right. Who has been incredibly productive for you for a fraction of the cost. And remember over the summer when this was the big topic of conversation as the running backs demanding more money, the current market, Jonathan Taylor was kind of the poster child for that.
And he was younger than some of the other guys who got into the cycle that a lot of running backs get into when you get to be 27, 28. And then it's time to get that new contract. People are like, well, you're 27, 28.
And
not going to pay you.
We can find another productive running back.
Right. And history shows that after about 6 years, there is a little bit of decline. So teams have not gotten good bang for their buck when they sign those running backs to that next contract. Austin Eckler's in that situation, and you can go on to look. How has Dalvin Cook done this year?
Not great.
Not great.
Not great.
That's why the Vikings cut him. Joe Mixon has had a decent year in a tough year for the Bengals. But he's at that age. He took the pay cut. So that's where it goes. And Taylor was seeing that and said, okay, well, pay me now. I've got my prime years coming. And it still hasn't worked out real well.
And the Titans even saw that whenever Derrick Henry broke his foot in the 2021 season. And I am not minimizing the impact and importance of Derrick Henry, but you brought in Dontrell Hilliard and Deontay Foreman, and you were still the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Right. They gave them suitable rushing stuff, right? And all that.
It's not
saying
same
all
as
that.
Derrick Henry.
I do think Derrick Henry is to be commended that he's been worth the money that they've paid him.
Every single penny.
Now, what happens next year? That's a whole nother discussion. They're going to have the Dalvin Cook. They're going to have the Austin Eckler, and Derrick Henry's even a couple years older than that. He'll be 30 next year. So that's going to be a tricky one. Coming attractions. But in the meantime, the whole thing here is the Titans are 4-0 at home. When they play well, they're able to make teams more one-dimensional, and they could not do that in Indianapolis, right? That was a big loss at the time because at the time you're still thinking, need a road win. This is a team you need to be able to be better than, and they weren't. So here they are with a chance for a rematch, and Indy is still sitting there going, hey, we've won 3 in a row. They've beaten 3 middling teams in doing so. If you look at their schedule going forward, it's not that tough. So they're saying you beat the Titans
knocking
here.
on the door of a playoff spot.
Yes, they're very much in the mix if they can win this game.
Let's get some of your thoughts on it. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you have a thought, anything is on the table. Derrick Henry, no Jonathan Taylor for the Colts this weekend. Will Levis, but Dylan texts in and says, it is absolutely nauseating to me that we're judging and grading a rookie quarterback who is surrounded by mediocrity. It's like trying to evaluate a lone dancer on a shaky stage with flickering lights and a broken sound system. Their skills might be exceptional, but the chaotic environment obscures their true talent. I think we need to be judging Will Levis every single game. We can judge him on a curve and say, well, he doesn't have a great offensive line in front of him. The ball has to come out quick, so the throws aren't going to be perfect. So we can grade it on a curve, but that's our job to evaluate Will Levis.
That is part of the job description, especially for rookies that play. More often than not, it's because a team is desperate and rebuilding. And even though Levis is not a first-round pick, that's sort of how it's evolved, is they've gotten to the point where out of necessity, he kind of had to go in there with the injury to Tannehill, and they don't have a great team around him. But through the years, the good quarterbacks are able to get through that storm or until the team does come up around them.
Joe
right?
Burrow, I think, is probably the
That's
perfect
a
example
very
of that.
good example of that.
And
yeah.
Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer and all of the chaos in his first year. Moving
Somehow
on
he
from the
survived.
coach,
Yeah.
against all odds.
Only the strong survive. So that's where Levis is. And they have to do as much as they can to put him in a position to succeed. And that's going to be hard. But this is a game where maybe they're not overwhelmed matchup-wise. They're playing at home. The Colts are not, they're not a juggernaut. So it's a good litmus test.
And I think that it's fair to judge Will Levis's individual throws or decisions in a vacuum. Like, I think that throw to Tajay Spears where he got blown up, that's a bad decision. It doesn't matter what's going on around you or the O-line or the receivers or the coaches, whatever it might be. That's just a bad decision that we can grade him on. They had a beautiful, beautiful pass to DeAndre Hopkins last week. And now we're getting to the point in the season where every game is blurring together. Who did they play last week?
The Panthers.
No.
The year before that was the debacle down in Florida against Jacksonville.
Was that Tampa?
Jacksonville.
Wow. Time flies. But that beautiful...
Tampa and then Jacksonville and then Panthers
Jacksonville.
last
Thank
week.
you. It was Jacksonville. That beautiful touchdown pass to DeAndre Hopkins. I thought that was a wonderful read and a wonderful throw. But when you're evaluating Will Levis's work as a whole, yeah, you have to look at the situation, the environment that he's in.
Yeah, this is another thing that's a problem with the developmental system in pro football is instead of playing for the Nashville Sounds or the Milwaukee Admirals, which is what would be a smart way to have Will Levis make these mistakes and develop.
Right.
He's got to develop in the toughest league in the world. That's a messed up thing, but that's how football is.
Wes in Hermitage texts in, says, if you think that Rand didn't have to give Amy a good resume on DeAndre Hopkins after we traded for Julio, you may be delusional. I know it's not the same, but from Amy's point of view, she could have been against it because of Julio. Rand has to get some credit for that, but so should Vrabel due to his relationship with DeAndre Hopkins. Of course. Of course,
Sure.
Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel get credit for that. But ultimately, what it came down to, just based off of my knowledge of the situation, in my opinion, DeAndre Hopkins was going to go wherever he got the most money, and that ultimately fell on Amy Adams Strunk. But it is on Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel to propose it to Amy Adams Strunk. Say, these are the holes that we have right now. This is what we need. This is why we think DeAndre Hopkins will fill those holes. And it's ultimately up to Amy Adams Strunk to say, yeah, we're willing to be the highest bidder.
I think if we can go back to the summer. I mean, how many days, how many weeks did we talk about that process? I mean, they put in the work. Yeah, they put in the work to lay the groundwork for him to come here. So you have to give them credit for that. As a group, I think that was a good example of collaboration.
Yeah.
I think Carthon and Vrabel, I think that's how the system, how the process is supposed to work to get a guy like that. The only question would have been if you didn't have him, where would you have spent that money? And I don't know the answer to that. Like, if you had more money to try to address problems, was there anybody out there anyway? I think you could reasonably say Hopkins, they paid a decent price, but he's been worth it.
He's been worth every single penny.
And these last 6 games, he really. I hope he stays on the field and is out there because it gives you a chance to put Levis in a position to succeed.
A young quarterback needs that.
Yes.
A veteran receiver that he can count on.
Especially
Derrick Henry.
Do we know if Burks will even play another game this year?
I have no idea. I'm not going to hold my breath.
Right.
When it comes to Treylon Burks, we're at the point for me, I don't expect anything. I don't. And if you get something from him, great.
All the better. Yeah.
All the better. Coy in Clarksville says, is it sad that as a Titans fan, I'm more excited for March, free agency time, or fun coupons time? That is sad. But that's where we're at.
That's where we're at.
That's where we're at. It is draft talk, free agency time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not great.
And no, it is fun in the meantime to have a quarterback that you're watching the growth process.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
It makes it more watchable. Like I'll go back to the Zach Mettenberger year. Marcus Mariota was hurt. I think it was Mariota's first year. Man, that was tough to watch. It was tough because you weren't watching the future. You were just watching a bunch of guys that they were trying to find better players. They didn't have any players.
Yeah.
That's why they picked first.
Right.
When John Robinson took over, that's where he started. Right? They had Mariota, and they had the first pick, and they made the trade with the Rams to get more picks, and then the process started from there.
I think that is what has made maybe this season just a smidge more palatable for Titans fans is the Will Levis factor of it all. All right, coming up next, I do have a college football thought because we heard from the College Football Playoff Committee last night, and there are several chaos scenarios. One of those chaos scenarios is the SEC being completely left out of the college football playoff, which I know, it sounds crazy, but is there a path to that? We'll discuss that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Hey, this Friday, Robbie and Rex Road will be broadcasting live for the grand opening of a new Dunkin' location in Franklin at 1441 New Highway 96 West. 102.5 The Game will be on site from 6 to 9 a.m. Stop by and have your chance to win lots of great prizes. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Hey, Preds fans, don't miss tonight's Smashville live show at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs at 6 p.m. See your Predator star players up close and personal. Get autographs and pictures. This week's special guests are Tyson Barrie and Ryan O'Reilly. Smashville Live is brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company.
I'll tell you this. If you want to go have a good time, those two guys are, number one, super classy. There's going to be a great conversation. They're great talkers, both of those guys. Tyson Barrie is one of the funniest guys on the team, for sure. O'Reilly, we know about him. And so if you want to go meet a couple good guys, bring your kids out there, I would highly suggest that.
It should be an absolute blast. Absolute blast. Before we wrap up today, I do have a quick college football thought. Because there is a nightmare scenario probably for a whole lot of listeners in our area with the college football playoff. And that is a potential SEC-less college football playoff. We got the updated college football playoff rankings last night. And I'm thinking that this might be the most difficult decision facing the college football playoff committee since the college football playoff was ever invented, really, because it has seemed like more years than not, maybe even every single year, the top four seems obvious. Or the top three seems obvious, right, and then you just throw the fourth in there.
I feel like there's been some years where it's really only a debate of the fourth team. And it's worked out more than I thought. There hasn't been as much chaos as I thought there would be when they went to four. My theory was you go from 2 to 4, there'll be more teams that have a case for 4, but that really hasn't happened that much.
It really hasn't. 2 years ago, it seemed like they were the 3 best teams, and then Cincinnati was put in there because they were undefeated in the regular season. And last year, it really felt like it was Ohio State, Michigan, and Georgia, but TCU won all of their regular season games, and you need 4, so throw TCU in there as well. This year, there is a pretty solid case for at least 8 teams to be in the college football playoff. So the rankings that were released yesterday, Georgia number 1, Michigan 2, not really any surprise there, Washington 3, Florida State 4, and then you've got this collection of one-loss teams. And I thought that was the most interesting thing, to see what the college football playoff committee prioritized with these one-loss teams that all have very different resumes. Oregon got the highest ranking of all one-loss teams at 5, Ohio State at 6, Texas and Alabama at 7 and 8. Willy, this is my nightmare scenario, I think, for a lot of Nashville fans, SEC fans, that there might not be an SEC team in the college football playoff at all. And the way that would happen is if Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, Michigan wins the Big Ten championship, which I think they most likely will, either Washington or Oregon, whoever the winner of the Pac-12 championship is. If Florida State beats Louisville in the ACC championship game, I think Texas would get the benefit of the doubt over Alabama or Georgia since they won the head-to-head and Georgia would not have the conference championship game. That is the SEC-less CFP that I think might anger a whole lot of Georgia and Alabama fans out there.
I think if you asked this question over the summer and just said, could the SEC ever not get in with a one-loss champion? You'd say, no way. No way. And it still might be no way, but that's the tricky thing for Alabama, or for the SEC, I should say. I mean, Alabama's got to win and just see what happens. Obviously, if Georgia wins, we know they're in. But you just hit on the scenario. If Michigan and, let's say, Florida State win, that's undefeated. So that's 2. I think Oregon's probably going to beat Washington.
I'm with you there.
I think, but Washington could win, and then
they're in.
Then you got 3 undefeated teams. So how are you going to leapfrog those teams? So there's 3 spots. So Alabama beats Georgia. So they both join the one-loss club. If Texas wins and looks good doing it, how could you throw them into pool? We talked to Mitch about this yesterday. It becomes maybe less of a just, well, it's as simple as Texas beat Alabama at Alabama, done deal. Because you have to compare them to all the other one-loss teams, which is a little more complicated. But I can see Texas going, you cannot keep us out. We won at Alabama. Alabama cannot go. And so do you then put Georgia in? They just lost to Alabama. They're not the league champion. And Texas would be the league champion having beaten Alabama at Alabama, and that's the team that beat Georgia? How does that work?
Is Georgia's resume strong enough to get in without a conference championship.
Is it? I don't think so.
I think you had 3 top 25 wins, which is impressive. You blew out Ole Miss. It was at home, but you blew out a good Ole Miss team. You blew out Tennessee on the road in Neyland Stadium. That's not easy. But you barely squeaked by against Missouri at home. Maybe that is enough for the CFP committee. But I look at it like you have to make sure that we're talking about 2023 Georgia. We're not talking about 2-time defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs. I don't think that you should get the benefit of the doubt because of what you did last season and the year before. But I think the important thing to look at here is what the committee prioritizes. Since Alabama lost to Texas, they have never leapfrogged Texas in the rankings. Never. Which shows me that the committee values that head-to-head over some of the improvements that Alabama has made throughout the regular season. Now, you can disagree with that all you want, but that seems to me that there is nothing that Alabama can do, short of Texas losing the Big 12 championship game, to leapfrog Texas into the CFP.
But that's where, as Mitch points out, there's 13 people on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
And there is turnover from year to year. So just because they have done something last year, 4 years ago, I don't know that there's any true pattern that we can say for sure.
There's not, really.
So I don't know. So Texas is favored by 15.5. They should win.
They should win.
They're gonna be there. Oregon is playing much better than Washington right now. Oregon's 9.5-point favorite. You're very likely to have to, if you're that committee, you're probably sweating right now going, we're going to have to make some tough decisions.
Some tough decisions.
So would I be shocked if the SEC gets locked out? Wouldn't there be some people politically around the country that would be like, it's about time? You know, we've played a back seat. I know that they play great football down there, but it's their turn to get locked out one time.
There's some
I wonder. I
just
wonder if there's people that on the committee that in the back of their mind they're trying to be professional and everything, but if it's really, really close and you almost can't give that's what happens in this. You can't really give a wrong answer because it's whatever you go with. It's all subjective.
It's what you value.
Yes.
I think the caveat in all of this could also be Florida State. Because Boo Corrigan, the chairman of the College Football Playoff Committee, said it is our job to pick the 4 best teams, not the 4 most deserving teams. And I think that means just because Florida State's 13-0 and is a conference champion doesn't make them one of the 4 best teams, but
right.
It does.
So could a one-loss team go in over an undefeated Florida State team because of the quarterback
they don't have their
situation?
starting quarterback? I don't think that's fair.
And do all 13 people on the committee have the same philosophy on that?
Probably not. Probably not. But I look at an Ohio State team in 2014 that won the national championship with their 3rd-string quarterback. So if Florida State does all the right things and they check all of the right boxes, how do you leave them out? You can't just assume they're not the same team without their starting quarterback.
That's why I thought Mitch made a very good point yesterday about this. Florida State is playing Louisville, and I think this is a tough position to be in if you're a team. Mm-hmm. It's not maybe as much. It's not maybe just win. You'll be undefeated. You're in. Mm-hmm. It might have to be you have to win and look good. Your quarterback has to look good. Where you say, okay, because what was the key in that Ohio State? Cardale Jones played a great game in the Big Ten championship game, lit them up.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, all of a sudden, hey, here's Ohio State. And they were justified because they turned right around and beat Nick Saban in Alabama, and then they won the whole thing.
Right. But if Florida State struggles against Louisville, just barely ekes by with a walk-off field goal, are they still one of the 4 best teams in America?
It's a fair question. And they don't have a huge resume. They went over LSU's big. And that backup quarterback, to me, I was watching him in the swamp. Tough atmosphere. He's tough.
Yep.
But he's not great.
He's not Jordan Travis.
Not even close.
Yep. Chaos. I'm here for it. That's going to do it for us today. We will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman & Company is up next.